AskDell. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne, broadcasting on Alexa.
I appreciate that.
And other smart speakers.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checker flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell media station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We are live from the Hillside Medical Game Studios, and you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan, in for Jared Stillman today. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day, everybody.
And happy Rick DiPietro Day, too.
That also Canada Day.
And Canada Day.
So many exciting days happening today. I mean, a lot of times I wake up and don't necessarily think about how I don't have $1.2 million going into my bank account, but July 1st every year definitely hits harder than others. But the biggest news throughout college football, really the biggest news in sports in the past 24 hours, is that USC and UCLA will enter the Big Ten in 2024. And that has so many repercussions, not just in the Pac-12, not just in the Big Ten, but throughout college football as a whole. Because the way that college football has been trending is it's going to be the pros. And it's one of those things that once Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, it was almost like trying to pushing out the toothpaste out of the tube. You can't put it back in. Once those moves are made, then every other college football program is looking at themselves and is looking at their conference and saying, okay, what is the best possible move for us? But there are big repercussions in the SEC, because I think now it's come down to, it's no longer the Power 5. It's no longer it's not going to be the Power 4. It's the Power 2 between the SEC and the Big Ten. And I've seen so many scenarios and just almost like a snowball effect of what can happen as a result of USC and UCLA entering the Big Ten, because that is not just an isolated incident. I think every college football fan is looking at, okay, which team is next? Which conference is next? Who is scheming things behind the scenes in order to make their payday a little bit larger? It's not about what's best for my conference. It's about what is best for me. It's about which move is going to line my pockets the best. So everyone is looking at the Big Ten and the SEC to see who's making the next move. And there can be some other massive moves that are going to be made in the SEC. But I think we're all looking at the big guys in this scenario. You're looking at Ohio State. You're looking at Michigan. You're looking at Alabama, Texas A&M, Georgia. You're looking at the biggest teams in these conferences, and a yearly Alabama-Ohio State matchup. That's a huge matchup. That is a marquee matchup. A yearly Michigan and Georgia matchup. I mean, that's a sexy thing to look at if and when inevitably college football expands into a super conference, or if and when inevitably the Big Ten and the SEC combine and they break off of the NCAA. I mean, and everything is on the table at this point. But we're focusing on the big names, the sexy franchises. But what we haven't talked a lot about is, how does this affect the little guys? Because when we talk about NIL, or at least when I talk about NIL, I always reference the fact that the big will get bigger and the small will get smaller. Alabama and Texas A&M and Georgia and Ohio State and Nebraska and Michigan, those big-time college football properties, they have plenty of money to go around. Their pot of cash to throw out for NIL deals is much larger than that of in Indiana or that of, let's say, a Vanderbilt. We brought this up with Jason Fitz yesterday, and he brought up a very fair point about how does this affect Vanderbilt? Will this essentially push Vanderbilt out? And I made the argument that there's no way that Vanderbilt will be out. out unless Vanderbilt decides to leave on their own accord. The SEC just signed a $3 billion contract with ESPN and Disney for the rights to not just the SEC as a whole, but really just the 2:30 SEC primetime game. Vanderbilt gets the same share of that money, gets the same share of the pot that Alabama does. It doesn't matter if Vanderbilt goes 0-12. Vanderbilt gets a 14th of the $3 billion deal that the SEC signed with Disney. So why would Vanderbilt voluntarily back out of that deal? But Sportico, John Wall Street of Sportico tweeted this earlier today, and it said, I talked to somebody in the know this morning about the shifting college sports landscape. Two big takeaways. Of this that I do want to get into because I think this has major college football playoff repercussions, and I think it makes a college football playoff expansion almost inevitable. But the part here that I want to focus in on is schools like Vanderbilt, Northwestern, and IU are not guaranteed to have a seat when the music stops. And I look at that and I wonder why. Because I've already laid out why would Vanderbilt leave. You know, Vanderbilt, although they get stomped by pretty much every SEC team that they play every year, Vanderbilt doesn't care. Vanderbilt has shown that they do not care. They're not going to put the money into the Vanderbilt football program, the same amount of money at least that an Alabama or an LSU or a Texas A&M would. So they're not going to compete. It's the most difficult conference in college football. Of course you're not going to compete when making your football team better is not a top priority. But why would Vanderbilt step away from the cash cow that is the SEC and the cash cow that's only growing? You add Texas and Oklahoma into the mix. The SEC has been in talks with Disney and with ESPN in order to adjust that deal and to make that deal even larger. So let's say you're looking at a $4 billion deal. That's even more money in Vanderbilt's pockets. And you would say, okay, well, why doesn't the SEC just kick Vanderbilt out? Because a league, a super conference with Ohio State and Michigan and Alabama and all of these big-time programs is a lot more attractive with just big-time programs when there's no quote-unquote cupcakes on your schedule or where there's no quote-unquote guaranteed wins on your schedule. And I think that there are a lot of SEC teams that look to Vanderbilt and say, well, that's an easy W. Because the SEC would have to give Vanderbilt an exorbitant amount of money. How much? I have no idea. But I have to assume that there is something written into contracts, and since this contract was just signed and hasn't even started, it'll start, I believe, in the 2024 season. Since it was just signed and hasn't even started, I have to believe that the SEC would have to pay Vanderbilt back whatever Vanderbilt would have made off of that TV deal. I believe you're looking at about a $40 million fine by the SEC if you decide to leave the SEC. Let's say today Kentucky decides no more of the SEC. We want to join the ACC. Hypothetically speaking, Kentucky would have to pay $40 million to the SEC. Now, that's, I think, just the starting point for what the SEC would have to pay out to Vanderbilt in order to just kick them to the curb. I don't think the SEC wants to do that because you look at all of the moves that the SEC has made over the past few years, it's all about putting money in their pockets, not vice versa. Having Vanderbilt in the SEC, clearly it doesn't inhibit the SEC from making money. The SEC makes plenty of money off of these TV deals. So I don't look to Vanderbilt, and I don't think that the SEC looks at Vanderbilt as enough dead weight in order to pay them the massive payday that it would take in order to essentially kick them to the curb. I also look at Northwestern. I also look at Indiana. I mean, those are, you could look as, some of the weaker programs in the Big Ten. They are not going to leave on their own accord. I don't think that Indiana looks to their football team and says, we're looking to find a way that we can win. I think that the moves over the past few weeks have shown that college football teams aren't necessarily looking to win anymore. They're looking to make more money. So when it comes to Vanderbilt, and I see the Sportico report, I don't see any scenario in which Vanderbilt is left without a seat in this game of musical chairs that's being played in college football.
Unless I'm mistaken, I can't recall a time when a conference kicked a member out. So I can't.
I don't think it's unheard of. Right. But I don't think it doesn't happen very often because of the massive payday.
Right. And where would Vanderbilt go? We know that Vanderbilt with some exceptions, does not put a lot of emphasis on its athletic programs in terms of the money it spends to fund those programs and to strengthen those programs. So where would Vanderbilt go? Would they go to the Ivy League? I mean, academically, it would make a lot of sense, but and competitively, it would make sense too, I suppose, because Harvard and Yale and Princeton and schools of that caliber are not powerhouses in many sports. So I guess Vanderbilt would fit right in that regard. But yesterday, I likened it to a group project in college where one member of the group didn't put in a lot of the work but still got the A. And that's how I feel about Vanderbilt, and I guess according to this report, Indiana or Northwestern, that they may in this realigned SEC get their butts kicked in most sports and probably not win a lot of games, but they're still getting a significant share of this exorbitant amount of money, and what school is going to turn that down, even if it means getting your butt kicked in almost every sport imaginable. So, yeah, I have a hard time imagining the SEC actively deciding to get rid of Vanderbilt. I also don't see Vanderbilt leaving either. Maybe, because there's a lot of moving parts in this. You look at what's left of the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and the ACC. On the outside looking in at this Big 10/SEC heavyweight bout, so to speak, and I'm sure those schools are going to raid those other conferences. So maybe if the SEC, takes Miami or Florida State, maybe Vanderbilt takes their spot in the ACC. I don't know. The ACC certainly does not make anywhere near as much money as the SEC, but it is a high, it's a conference of high regard, of high standing, and they do have several high-ranking academic institutions like Duke and Virginia and North Carolina. So it would make sense there too. But I think I just have a hard time imagining Vanderbilt choosing not to take the money and run if they have that option.
And also, to your point, I think there are several teams and schools that are feeling incredibly vulnerable right now with all of these changes. I look to maybe Washington in the Pac-12 or
Oregon.
really Oregon, or essentially every single team in the Big 12. They're feeling incredibly vulnerable, and rightfully so, because they don't have a permanent home. I think there are several other teams and schools and programs that should feel light years more vulnerable than Vanderbilt feels right now. Because in my opinion, Vanderbilt is sitting pretty in the SEC, and they're sitting pretty collecting their checks. And in my opinion, I don't think that there is any scenario in which Vanderbilt gets kicked out of that comfortable seat that they're currently sitting in. But there's another aspect of this. We talk about the teams making money, the schools making money off of these deals. But I think that there's a third party involved in this move of USC and UCLA to the Big Ten that I don't think it's talked about enough. I'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought on this. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman today. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
They're still in good shape to make the playoffs.
and I-840,
Players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
there's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams.
This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
Calling a criminal defense lawyer or a divorce lawyer, you may think it's the worst day of your life. It doesn't have to be. If you have quality, competent representation who can guide you through a complex system, we can do that for you. Despite if you've been arrested for a DUI or a robbery charge, whether or not you're going through a divorce or a post-divorce, or demanding your fundamental constitutional right to parent your children. 615-604-6263. AmandaJGentry.com.
QC Kinetics patient Robert Patterson, a veteran and business owner, struggled at work and in the gym with chronic agonizing shoulder pain.
Those injuries just continue to nag, and if you don't treat them, they just get worse. And I just kind of abused my body for a long time, and it finally had said enough is enough.
That's okay, because QC Kinetics tells your pain, hey, enough is enough. Their regenerative treatments bring you relief by helping restore and repair damaged tissue with no drugs, no downtime, and best of all, no surgery.
I was able to exceed the goals that I had previously attained in the gym. It was absolutely worth its weight in gold, so I could continue to live life without limitation.
Ready to get lasting relief from your joint pain? Call QC Kinetics to learn more about how natural biologic treatments can get you lasting results. Call now. It's a free consultation.
615-249-4024. QC Kinetics. 615-249-4024.
1025 The Game is teaming up with Newton Motor Group and Souls for Souls to provide shoes for children experiencing homelessness in Nashville and the surrounding area. With school coming back, our goal is to raise $20,000, which will provide 1,000 pairs of shoes for kids. Please help however you can by going to thegamenashville.com/shoes. All donations go directly to Souls for Souls to give shoes to children in Middle Tennessee. thegamenashville.com/shoes.
Bob's Steak and Chop House is a renowned award-winning steakhouse in major cities across the U.S. Nashville is lucky to have a location here in downtown at the Omni Nashville Hotel. Fine dining is brought to a new level at Bob's with awards like the Wine Spectator Award 4 years in a row, TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence 5 years in a row, and Open Tables Diner's Choice Award 6 years in a row. Fine dining at its best. Bob's Steak and Chop House, open Wednesday through Saturday, 5 to 10 p.m. in the Omni Nashville Hotel. Complimentary valet parking is always available.
It's on. It's happening. Remember, you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter.
Get out of the way. I'm watching the game.
Presented by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
To me, this move, I don't know if it spells the end of the Pac-12 or the Big 12 for that matter, but it feels like things are moving more and more towards a Power 4 and not so much a Power 5.
Really more like a Power 2.
Or Power 2.
That's just the reality of it. It's the Big Ten and the SEC head-to-head dominating the landscape, and everyone else is going to be pretty irrelevant. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't know how exactly it's going to take shape or when it's going to completely get there. But those two have already been moving away from the rest of the pack financially for quite some time. And, you know, when you have a situation where the Big Ten and the SEC schools are going to be getting, you know, $75, $80, $100 million a year each, and, you know, the ACC and the Big 12 are, you know, like in the 30s or whatever, then that's a pretty big break. That's not playing on the same playing field. So I don't know how big the Big Ten is going to get. I don't know what the SEC is going to do. Everybody's kind of wondering, but really all of college sports right now is looking to see if they can get on one of those two lifeboats, because if you can't, then you're going to have some problems.
Stillman and Company, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman hanging out with you. And that was today on the Midday Show, breaking down what is the future of college football look like. And I completely agree. Is this going to be Power 4 in college football? No, it's not. This is now going to be Power 2. Because I don't see a scenario in which the Big 12 can survive their massive change in Texas and Oklahoma leaving the SEC leaving for the SEC this past year. And I also don't see a scenario in which the Pac-12 can survive their two biggest properties and the biggest market now leaving the Pac-12. And I think that there's a really interesting element to this that I don't think people are talking enough about. I've said it several times, and I know that this is something that's kind of been reverberated around college football spaces in the past 24 hours. But this is a move that's completely motivated by money. And we talk about the schools and the teams when we talk about this, that, USC and UCLA will have a huge payday for this, as will every other team in the Big Ten, as will every other team in the SEC benefiting from Texas and Oklahoma entering the SEC. We think about it in terms of the schools. But there's a huge part of this that at least I know you and I haven't chatted about, Adam, and that's the TV deal side of things. I just mentioned that the SEC signed a $3 billion contract with Disney in order to have the rights to all of SEC properties, all SEC games in terms of college football. So I think that there's another element at play here, and it involves Fox. Because I think Fox was looking at ESPN making these massive moves in college football, most notably signing this deal with the SEC, because it was where CBS had the rights to the top SEC game of the day, the 2:30, 3:30 kick, the biggest game of the day. So it felt like there was a little bit of college football love spread around. ESPN signs this deal, and essentially ESPN holds the rights to the biggest money-making games in college football, barring, the Big Ten big noon kickoff and some Pac-12 games in which Fox held the rights to. But how interesting is let's say, hypothetically, Washington State, Oregon State game on Fox compared to a 2:30 kickoff Alabama Texas A&M game? It doesn't compare. And that's all of the advertising dollars going into ESPN's pockets. I think Fox saw ESPN make this move. I think Fox looked to Texas and Oklahoma, two of the biggest cash cows in college football, entering the biggest cash cow conference in college football, and said, we need to get ourselves a piece of this. I believe Fox is a big catalyst in this situation, and not enough people are talking about it, because I believe Fox probably sat in a room and said, where is there money left to be made? What are our biggest untapped markets, untapped potential that we aren't capitalizing off of enough? Fox's biggest college football property, you could argue, is the Big Ten kickoff. So, the Big Ten Big Noon kickoff. I think Fox went to USC and UCLA looking at one of the biggest, if not the biggest television market in the country, not just in college football, but period, and looked to USC and UCLA, who probably felt a little bit of discomfort in the Pac-12. I mean, it's not a secret that the Pac-12 is incredibly mismanaged, that the Pac-12 has been increasingly less competitive since, let's say, the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Pete Carroll USC days. I don't remember the last time that I got really excited about a very competitive Pac-12 game. I mean, the Pac-12 has consistently been left out of the college football playoff, barring, Oregon. Was that 2016, I believe, 2014? Whenever they got absolutely stomped by Ohio State in the national championship. I mean, just look at this past college football playoff. Before the Pac-12, there were two SEC teams, a Big Ten team, and a group of 5 team that got in before any Pac-12 team. So I think that USC, one of the biggest money-making properties in college football, and as well as UCLA, they felt very vulnerable in a conference that has been mismanaged, to say the least, over the past few years. And I look to Fox that says, look, we need to maintain our relevancy and our properties in college football. We need to make the Big Ten a lot more interesting. We have a need for you, and you have a need for the Big Ten. And I think that Fox facilitated this move a lot in order to compete with ESPN. I think that the Big Ten made this move in order to compete with the SEC. And I think that USC and UCLA made this move to protect themselves from the Pac-12. And this was a move that benefited USC, UCLA, the Big Ten, and Fox all alike, because I don't think that the television rights or the television markets are innocent in this situation.
Well, I think the last time, to answer your question, I think the last time that a Pac-10/12 team won the national championship of football would have been the 2004 or 2005 Trojans. So it's been...
2004 was Texas.
Okay.
It was Texas USC. Texas won that game.
Yes.
But, Ian, do you know the last time a Pac-12 team won a national championship? Because that was the very dominant USC team.
It's been at least 15 years.
It has to be the USC, I would think.
I mean, I feel.
Around there. I don't know.
I feel
I'll look
bad.
it up.
I feel bad for the Pac-12, just because of, as we were talking about before, what teams are of interest to the casual fan that are remaining in the Pac-12. I mean, Oregon has been good, and when they're good, you might want to watch them, mostly because they wear ridiculous uniforms. Washington, whatever, but like Utah, Colorado, like if you're not an alum of those schools, then who cares? And
the Pac-12 has given no college football fans reason to care.
Yeah, USC 2004.
Yeah,
there you go. Shows shows how much I know about college football. There you go. I'll take that any day of the week. But I mean, when you look at TV rights deals, I mean, it's amazing how much these media companies pay for these things. I mean, I remember when the NHL, when ESPN and Turner replaced NBC as the NHL rights holder, the money that ESPN and Turner paid for the NHL versus the NBC was just night and day. So if Fox wants to get into a ratings war with ESPN, which we know that they do, I see your logic for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Fox understanding how much money is in college football, and that's really why all of these moves are being made, is because there is so much interest and so much money in college football. And I think Fox saw themselves being left out of the conversation because ESPN was just dominating all of these major moves. And it makes sense on all the parties involved, for Fox, for the Big Ten, for USC and UCLA. And I have to look at the Pac-12 in this situation and think that this is just another major mismanagement that the Pac-12 has done for itself. And I also look to the statement that they put out in regards to this movement, because it was just so typical Pac-12. Because they issued the statement. Here's what it says. Well, we are extremely surprised and disappointed by the news coming out of UCLA and USC today. We have a long and storied history in athletics, academics, and leadership, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. You were disappointed and surprised? I mean, I don't feel bad, honestly, for the Pac-12 that this move will probably inevitably kill the Pac-12, because shame on them for not being more aware and not getting ahead of this. And to see the move of Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC and not thinking, okay, well, now what do we do? How do we make our conference better? Where are our shortcomings in the past few years? Why aren't we competing for a national championship? What can we do? It's like the Pac-12 was sitting back and thinking, well, our conference is safe from all of this. And clearly it's not. So I do have to think that the Pac-12 is very much so guilty in this situation for not getting ahead of it and not taking the initiative to protect the Pac-12 and doing what it needs to keep USC and UCLA there, because now they're missing out on a huge payday.
Yeah, and you look at the teams that are left in that conference. We mentioned Oregon and Washington, and you have Arizona and Arizona State, neither of which are college football powers. And you think about which schools could replace UCLA and USC, and could it be San Diego State? Could it be Boise State? Like, neither of those teams. No, with all due respect to Boise, Idaho, it doesn't have the same. It's not LA. It's not Los Angeles, and San Diego is a nice place, but it's not Los Angeles. So I'm not sure what moves the Pac-12 can make to remain relevant. They just lost their two most storied universities, their most successful athletic programs, and they're going to probably replace them with, solid mid-major type schools, even though I guess mid-majors don't really exist anymore. But with, Boise State, San Diego State, I'm sorry, that doesn't really interest me very much as a casual watcher of the Pac-12.
615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought on this. The news came out that Sportico reported that this could eventually mean that Northwestern, Indiana, and Vanderbilt could be left without a seat in the SEC and also the Big Ten, respectively. I just don't see a scenario in which that happens. So if you have a thought on that, we'll get to your phones. And also, coming up next, how does this affect the future of the SEC and also the college football playoff? I want to get into that. Coming up next, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
they're still in good shape to make the playoffs,
and I-840,
players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
There's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams.
This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
Hello, Nashville. Looking to save money on your wireless bill? You can when you choose Consumer Cellular. Sign up today and you'll get the exact same coverage as the leading carriers for half the cost. This gives you direct access to the widest, most established cellular networks available. Consumer Cellular offers flexible monthly plans with no contract and simple, affordable service that's perfect for your lifestyle and budget. Featuring a wide variety of top-of-the-line phones from Samsung, Motorola, and Apple, you'll find a phone that's perfect for you. Everything is backed by a 100% risk-free guarantee, plus 100% U.S.-based award-winning customer support. Switch your talk, text, and data plan before July 31st and get $100 on every new line of service. Right-size your plan and downsize your bill with Consumer Cellular. Visit consumercellular.com/Nashville100 and enter code Nashville100 to start saving today.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety in school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF on the ground in Ukraine. We won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/action.
Summer heat is here. How is your air conditioner holding up? Costs are rising everywhere. Grocery bills, gas bills, utility bills, you name it, up, up, up. Is your AC old, inefficient, and costing more than it should? Interest rates are rising, but not at Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Qualified buyers have up to 72 months. No interest for a new York air conditioner and 6 months no interest for repairs. That's at Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. All new systems come with a 10-year parts and labor warranty. That's at Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, a York certified comfort expert company. Schedule now at springhillac.com.
Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Subscription required. Refund available for 60 days after purchase.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 90% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/joy. You'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the biggest brands at 90% off. That's right, get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but 90% cheaper. It's the same medication you get from your doctor, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. Results are guaranteed or your money back. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/joy. That's 4hims.com/joy for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/JOY.
Robbie and Rex Road here on ESPN.
Welcome into the DDC.
Stillman & Company is delivered. There's a new way to hear 102.5 The Game. Nashville's best sports talk on 106.3 FM. From downtown Nashville to Spring Hill on I-65 and to Murfreesboro on I-24. You now have two choices to hear our great sports programming.
Get the extra point, no problem.
And the Nashville Predators. Scores! Check out 106.3 now and save it as a preset.
Hey Nashville, this is David Price. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
What do we know about these two schools, USC and UCLA, perhaps acting in the same way of approaching the Big Ten about interest in joining their league?
Well, it seems like a very similar pattern. I guess the Big 12 had the blueprint, if you want to call it that. But look, this to me honestly also explains possibly why we haven't heard yet about the Big Ten's TV deal, which has reportedly, closing in on $1 billion. And when you're talking about each school in that conference making upwards of $80 to $100 million annually, of course there's going to be interest. And anyone who has followed college football knows that realignment is never over, but this is another shocker that is going to completely alter the college football landscape.
That was Heather Dinich on SportsCenter yesterday, and it's so true. Realignment isn't something that's new to college football. I mean, throwback to the Big East. Realignment is constantly happening in college football. I mean, think about Missouri and Texas A&M joining the SEC in 2012. That wasn't, that was a pretty earth-shattering move at the time. It just feels like realignment is happening at such a more rapid pace, and also with such a bigger implications. It's not just Louisville entering the ACC. I mean, this is USC joining the Big Ten. Like, these are massive moves. But I looked at this and I think, okay, what's the next move that's going to happen? How is this going to affect the SEC? How is this going to affect the college football playoff? Because I think that this is just a snowball effect. Once these teams move to the Big Ten, then there's going to be all these other teams and other conferences looking at each other and looking to try and find their new home, a more safe, more stable home, now that USC and UCLA have made their move. But I looked at the SEC and I look at a few teams that are probably trying to, scramble and make some calls. And I look to Clemson because I think Clemson is probably sitting pretty in the ACC, knowing that an ACC championship feels inevitable almost yearly. Of course, Florida State has been down over the past few years and has not met expectations per that program's expectation over the past few years, but it is still a big-time college football property. I look at Miami. I look at North Carolina and Duke and several of these other teams in the ACC that are probably feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now. And I do think that they're looking to the SEC to expand. And I think the SEC is going to want to respond to the Big Ten. Because the SEC started this fight. They started this trend whenever Texas and Oklahoma entered the SEC. The Big Ten answered. So who will be the next to answer? I would have to think it would be the SEC. So I'm sure Clemson and Dabo Swinney is probably knocking on the president of Clemson's door and saying, what are we going to do about this? Because now we need to be part of the puzzle. And I think that Miami and Florida State will also be looking to and exiting, because if Clemson makes their exit, then Miami and Florida State have no value to stay in the ACC. They're going to want to switch to the SEC as well. But there's a few caveats to that. We bring up TV rights, and that's a big part of this here. That's a huge part of the puzzle, because it's really the only thing that's keeping these teams in their conferences is TV deals. That's why Texas and Oklahoma won't come to the SEC until 2025, is because their TV deal with the Big 12 expires that year, and it would be an $80 million fine in order to leave early. The ACC just signed their TV rights deal a couple of years ago, and that runs through 2036. And the fine is going to be astronomical to leave the ACC early. But I don't think that Clemson and Florida State and Miami and these other schools in the ACC are going to be sitting pat until 2036. I also don't think that Greg Sankey is going to be sitting there just waiting until 2036 to acquire Clemson and Miami and Duke and UNC and Florida State, whatever schools that might want to leave the ACC. I don't think they're going to be sitting there because, as we've seen, realignment is happening at an absolute rapid pace. So what happens next? Will teams want to leave the ACC? Well, so many teams want to leave the ACC that it's going to be almost negligible to maintain the ACC. And then those teams go to the SEC, that there's enough teams that want to leave to go to the SEC or the Big Ten and find their new homes in the Big Ten, and then TV deals get worked out after that. Because I wouldn't be surprised to see Syracuse, Boston College, and Pitt want to join the Big Ten. That makes the most sense geographically, at least, but I guess geography doesn't matter anymore. since, UCLA will play probably the first game ever in snow in 2024. And I look at Georgia Tech or Wake Forest, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Clemson, all of those, at least geographically speaking, make sense to join the SEC. And I think Greg Sankey is looking at Clemson and the amount of success that they've had over the past couple of years. The fact that Clemson is now a very, very hot ticket in college football, and Greg Sankey wants a piece of that. He looks at Miami, who just signed Jaden Rashada, which is one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he wants a piece of that as well. He's looking at Florida State as well. All big money-making teams, and Greg Sankey wants a piece of that. So I do wonder which domino will be the next one to fall. The ACC entering the Big Ten and the SEC, and will they be able to navigate the TV deal in order to make those deals happen? I think that's 100% on the docket, and it's going to be interesting to see the first domino that falls.
You know which university is the wild card in all of this? I don't think we've talked about them yet. Notre Dame.
That is a very interesting point.
What is Notre Dame going to do? Because they are the independent, right? I feel like if the SEC or the Big Ten were to want to, strike the fatal blow, it would be to somehow acquire Notre Dame. I'm reading this from ESPN. It says that Notre Dame needs a home for its non-football sports. Currently, that's the ACC. Mm-hmm. Additionally, Notre Dame currently has a deal with the ACC stating that should the school join a conference full-time, it must be the ACC. But what happens if the ACC's existence is threatened by a move to super conferences? The second is that the Irish need a path to the football playoff. In the current landscape, that path exists, and Notre Dame has made it to the playoff twice already, and most expansion models would likely make that path even easier. So, and Notre Dame has its own television deal, right? Like with NBC,
with NBC,
that.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work with that. I don't know if NBC would, or whichever conference acquired Notre Dame would also get a piece of the NBC deal. I don't know how that would work, but I feel like Notre Dame is the real wild card in all of this, because the SEC could take Clemson, could take Miami, it could take Florida State, Duke, Carolina, whatever. But I feel like Notre Dame is the one thing that could ultimately decide the quote unquote winner of this turf war. If one of those conferences can convince Notre Dame to leave its independent status and become a full-time member of one of those conferences.
And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned Notre Dame, because it is a very interesting wild card in this entire situation. And I think it has everything to do with the college football playoff and if/when it inevitably expands. And that's what I want to get into coming up next. What will the college football playoff look like? And how will it be decided? And will Notre Dame feel a push by these conferences to eventually join a conference? I want to get into that coming up next. Plus, your phone, 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman & Company on 1025 The Game.
What's up? It's Jared for the FanDuel Sportsbook app. This season, turn Ks into cash and big hits into big wins with FanDuel Sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just sign up with the promo code JGM, place your first bet, and FanDuel will give you up to $1,000 back in free bets if you do not win. I'll tell you right now, the Yankees are red hot. In fact, the over-under, you can take a look at their season win total, but it's out of this world for the Yankees. And so when they're playing on a daily basis, I don't know how you can go and pick against the Bombers. There's no better place to bet America's pastime than on America's #1 sportsbook and my official sportsbook app. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and sign up with the promo code JGM to get started with your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. 21 and older and present, Tennessee. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. And restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Every Wednesday at 5, join us for Jared versus Joe as they debate all of the big topics in sports, presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Mayweather Boxing and Fitness on ESPN 1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
From the Fox 17 News Code Red Weather Center.
I'm Fox 17 News Code Red meteorologist Dan Guthrie. Up to 93 this afternoon, heat index up to 99. Partly cloudy skies with isolated to scattered showers heading into the early evening.
This weather report brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
Call the Happy Face Truck today.
The clock is ticking on Genesis Diamond's amazing finance offer. You have until 5 p.m. Saturday to take advantage of the hottest offer of the summer. 5 years, zero interest financing on practically everything in our showcases. Get in now and splurge. Maybe treat yourself. How about a stunning $12,000 designer ring, complete with a GIA diamond for just $200 a month? It's the smartest, easiest, and best way to buy. Nothing down and no interest for 5 years. But hurry, this incredible offer ends Saturday and will not be extended. Only at Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills and Cool Springs. On approved credit.
Back in 1949, Dr. Houston began the tradition of treating athletes for common sports injuries. Today, the sports medicine physicians at Houston Clinic Orthopedics continue his legacy. Whether you play at school, in a league, on a professional team, or just enjoy being active, Houston Clinic Orthopedics physicians are there to help you stay in the game. Common sports injuries include tears, strains, sprains, and instabilities of the knee, shoulder, and ankle. Houston Clinic Orthopedics is located where you work and live. Visit tn.houston.com to book your appointment online. When experience matters, trust Houston Clinic Orthopedics.
7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF, unicefusa.org/action.
Did you book the Townsend's 10th anniversary tickets?
Alona's travel agency is overbooked and experiencing delays. She needs to land a new project manager to clear her business's runways.
Yes, Mrs. O'Hara, we checked. Pygmy goats do not count as emotional support animals.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Earn up to $500 in sponsored job credits by interviewing on Indeed. Visit Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions apply.
Darren McFarland.
I feel like we're a better playoff team.
Willie Donick.
You're in a window of a division you can win.
Chase McCabe.
I'm not signing him for more than $1 million.
The DDC. Weekdays from 10 to 2.
Presented by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling.
On Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
If you're the ACC Commissioner, Jim Phillips, you've been on the job a year and a half, you have to be beside yourself because you helped kill the CFP. And now he's got to deal with the survival of the ACC because they can't, obviously, unless they can talk Notre Dame into joining on the football side, and they have had no success whatsoever in that. And even if they get Notre Dame, they still have a weakened position. This was really a body blow. This wasn't the SEC. This was one of their alliance members. Remember last August when the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big Ten all joined together to form this alliance to try to get better scheduling and a different voting block.
That was Paul Feinbaum on what the ACC is going to do, and he mentions Notre Dame. And Adam, that was a point that you brought up last segment about what is Notre Dame going to do? Are they going to feel pressure to join a conference? They do have that TV deal with NBC. And here's my take on it. I think Notre Dame is sitting pretty, and they're totally fine being an independent right now. But I do think the way that things are heading in college football is we're heading toward either a Power 2 or a super conference or just like two massive, whatever that might be. It's changing. And there's going to be, 30-team conferences, and it's going to just be a massive volume of teams in certain conferences. But until that happens, I don't think that Notre Dame is going to feel any sort of pressure because, realignment has happened in the past, and Notre Dame has never felt that pressure to join, at least on the football side of things. So unless or when that day comes, super conferences do form, I don't think Notre Dame's going to feel pressure. But I do think that there's another element of it here, and that's the change of the college football playoff. Because now that you have two 16-team conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC, once USC and UCLA join and Texas and Oklahoma join, then the college football playoff is going to look drastically different. And the way that the college football playoff expansion has been suggested is the 12-team playoff, and there will be 5 guaranteed spots, and that will be the conference champion of each Power 5 school. And then there will be 7 at-large bids into the 12-team college football playoff. And I believe there's either 4 or 5 teams that get a first-round bid in the college football playoff. I forget exactly what the breakdown is. But those 5 Power 5 conference champions will be automatically into the college football playoff. But now those things have changed so much because that college football playoff draft of an expansion happened before Texas and Oklahoma said that they were going to join the SEC, and UCLA and USC were joining the Big Ten. So things look drastically different now. So I think that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to push so much for at-large bids, because why would the SEC want spots for conference champions for, a spot reserved for the Pac-10, I guess now it's going to be, for a 10-team conference rather than the SEC with 16 teams. So the SEC and the Big Ten are going to really fight for, no conference champion is going to be guaranteed a spot into the college football playoff, which is what is constructed now. I mean, you look at 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff, so there's no guarantee for a conference champion. But with a 16-team conference, they're not going to want one spot reserved for a certain conference. So I think that would depend on Notre Dame deciding on what they're going to do. Because if that ends up being what happens, where it's just 12 at-large bids, then Notre Dame would feel no need to join a conference. Before all of this happened, before the realignment happened, I thought that was going to be a big push for Notre Dame to join a conference because they would want to compete for that spot, that guaranteed spot in the college football playoff. Let's say Notre Dame joined the ACC, they win the ACC. That's a more obvious, more paved road for Notre Dame to be in the college football playoff. But if it's just at-large bids, then I don't think Notre Dame feels any sort of pressure. But they will feel pressure if all of the top teams and the biggest names and biggest properties in college football join one of 2 conferences. I do think that we see Notre Dame eventually join a conference.
Which would be weird. In football.
And I do think that there are several Notre Dame fans that would just be gutted if that did happen. But, I mean, things are changing. It's not like Notre Dame would be joining just any other conference, any other Power 5 conference. It would be in extenuating circumstances.
So Heather Dinich reported on ESPN about how this could affect this realignment could affect the college football playoff. She said, even in their bulked up status, it's hard to imagine the SEC and Big Ten not wanting an expanded postseason playoff, especially if they can get more teams into a bigger field and in turn more revenue from it. But will their vision change for what it should look like? That answer might depend on any further changes. Multiple sources said Thursday this isn't the end of realignment, that it will only trigger more moves. And remember, the Pac-12 recently scrapped divisions to pit its 2 best teams against each other in the conference championship game to better position itself for the playoff. Without USC and UCLA and pending any other exodus, its 2 best teams are defending conference champion Utah and Oregon. In prior CFP expansion talks, the Pac-12 wasn't wed to the notion of automatic qualifiers, but it's fair to ask if this might change that stance because, does Utah belong in the college football playoff?
And you could make the argument that they would be one of the best 12 teams in college football, and then they would get an at-large bid. But it doesn't make sense to guarantee those spots for the conference champions whenever Utah is competing against Colorado or Washington, no disrespect to those schools, while Ohio State is competing against USC, UCLA, and Michigan. It just doesn't make any sense anymore with realignment. But let's go to your phones. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris from Atlanta texts in and says, one interesting question I have about some of these school status is, why don't the private schools all band together to form their own conference and let the public ones do so as well? So looking at some of the private schools, ACC, SEC, Big Ten, at Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Duke, Syracuse, Northwestern. Is Georgia Tech private?
I don't believe it is.
Okay, but looking at those private schools, none of those that I just listed are powerhouse football programs. Of course, Wake Forest had a good year this past year. Northwestern had a pretty good run, I believe, in 2020. But none of those schools, if you see that if you're a college football fan of Alabama or Texas A&M or whatever that might be, if you see those teams on your schedule, you're not really shaking in your boots. So it doesn't make sense for all of those private school teams to band together because they would be leaving big-time college football conferences to join together, and those TV deals wouldn't be even nearly as close to what the TV deal would be for the currently constructed SEC or Big Ten.
Right. There's no I'm thinking in the ACC, there are no private school powerhouse teams. Clemson is public, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it is.
So
but you got Duke and Wake Forest. Those are the two private schools.
Those are private.
I believe in
yes.
the ACC.
Carolina is public. NC State is public. I believe Georgia Tech is public.
Boston College,
Virginia Tech.
Florida State, Miami, all public.
Yeah, so I guess Duke and Wake Forest, and neither of those teams are known for their football programs. They're known more for their basketball programs. And then you would know better than me the SEC private schools, if there are
I
any.
believe just Vanderbilt.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, so I'm sorry, but Duke, Wake Forest, and Vanderbilt are not. Maybe if they compete in a spelling bee, I'll be interested in watching that. But
yeah,
not,
the all academic bowl would be really fun between these schools.
Yes.
But I don't think the TV money is there for
not the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
The mathletes.
No. The all academic bowl might be more entertaining than the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah, I'd watch a spelling bee. I do love me the spelling bees.
Yeah, especially when they have the spell off that they did this time around.
Oh yeah, it's a blast.
But yeah, I just think there aren't enough good private schools with football programs to do that. I feel like it would be incredibly lopsided.
Boston College is private.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, but still, that's another one.
Right, they're still at they're a 500 team every year thereabouts.
Right. Andrew from Dover texts in and says, I say you get all your top schools split up into the SEC and the Big Ten, let them play out their seasons, then set up an NFL-style playoffs for each side, and the Big Ten champion plays the SEC champion for the national championship like you would the Super Bowl. I think we're getting really close to that already. I think that, as the SEC and the Big Ten will inevitably continue to expand, I think you're going to see an NFC AFC style playoff in college football because you're getting all of the best teams in college football in these two conferences. I think it's going to resemble the NFL more so than it ever has before.
Well, how many teams would you invite?
Now there's 6 teams in each.
So would you invite the top 8?
You could split up the ACC into the Big Ten and the SEC, so that would be, 20-something teams in each? And so that would be even bigger than the NFC and the AFC. Right. So I don't think that we're too far from that the college football playoff will resemble, if it does expand to 12 teams, it will resemble the NFL a lot more than it ever has in the past.
Yeah, and I think you were talking about this the other day about how it seems that with these conferences joining forces that it's going to end up being, a more of an NFL style situation. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that makes things more interesting for the viewers with those gigantic TV deals that ESPN and Fox have, and I guess NBC in the case of Notre Dame. But I really, it all sounds great. It gives us something to talk about in during the slowest time of the sports calendar. But I want to see it in practice. I want to see what happens once these conferences start playing with realignment and how they ultimately determine it. Because once we know what an expanded college football playoff would look like, then we could start fantasy booking, matchups, and that's, I think, will be the best part of it.
Will from Nashville texts in and says there is 0 chance that Vanderbilt leaves. Why would Vanderbilt leave? They wouldn't. The SEC gets whispers from the Big Ten and other conferences that they are academically inferior. Vanderbilt gives the SEC academic street cred and obviously the only team top 15 academically.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were talking about. It doesn't make sense for Vanderbilt for multiple reasons to leave. I mean, you would hope that iron sharpens iron, so to speak. So if more established athletic universities enter the SEC, perhaps that gets Vanderbilt to raise its game a little bit when it comes to recruiting and NIL and trying to be competitive, so they're not just getting trashed every Saturday afternoon. But that the money is the money. It's all about the money. I see no scenario where Vanderbilt either leaves on its own accord or gets kicked out.
And I don't either. But to Will's point, I don't think anyone cares about the academics. I mean, Vanderbilt is a wonderful school. I'm not saying that it's not. But I don't think that the SEC getting with a $3 billion deal with ESPN and only getting more money in their pockets because of college football is thinking to themselves, well, Vanderbilt is a very, very good school academically. They don't care
They're not
They
worried
don't
about that.
care about
They're
the
not worried about that.
academics. I always laugh about this one graphic that I saw on Twitter. And I believe it was Texas football. And it said, best team GPA in school history.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 273. They don't care about academics. They care about football. That's where the money is coming from. Nobody cares if your GPA is a 4.0 or a 2.2. They care about the football. They care about the product on the field. I don't think the SEC is worried about the academic inferiority of some schools over the others.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Back to your phones. Bruce is up next on the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's funny that you, Bruce, brought up the comment that you did because it's a little bit different with the Big Ten, and I want to bring that to the table. The Big Ten, besides being a sports conference, is also a research consortium. And the Big Ten is only interested in members who are a member of the American Association of Universities. There are only 63 of those in the U.S. All Big Ten members, including USC and UCLA, are members of the AAU with the exception of Nebraska. And Nebraska was when they joined the conference. And the reason that's so important to the Big Ten is besides their work as an athletic conference, they pull resources for research. And I know, I don't know the exact numbers, but the numbers they obtain via research, via the schools that they have, is almost what they get out of their rights deal from the Big Ten Network. So, it's interesting when you look at expansion, you say, well, this school might fit in well with the Big Ten. It won't if it's not part of the American Association of Universities. And you go on their website and see those 63 schools that are. Just as a
thank you for your call, Bruce. And I think that's a very interesting topic that he brings up. If it is a moneymaker, I don't know. I don't know if that's what the Big Ten is going to prioritize. If the Big Ten can see that they can expand to, let's say a few more schools in the ACC or the Pac-12 or whatever that might be, if they see that it'll benefit even more so as a payday, I think that's something that they might be able to bend and break on. I honestly, I didn't know that was a thing. And I think that's
so I have it up here. As he said, 63 members in the United States and 2 in Canada. So we're looking at potential SEC and ACC schools. Let's see. Well, Vanderbilt is in the AAU. Georgia Tech is.
That would make sense.
Virginia is. Duke is.
So there you go.
Yeah. So
there you go. Then it would make sense.
It would make sense.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Moving on to the professional side of things, looking at the Titans offseason, is there a move that they could make this year that would kind of resemble a move that they made last year that wasn't very popular? I'll break that down coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
Your speaker at home is so smart that even Alexa knows where to find Nashville's best sports talk.
102.5 The Game is Nashville's best sports talk.
Ask Alexa to enable 102.5 The Game. Once enabled, ask Alexa to play 102.5 The Game.
Welcome to 102.5 The Game.
We are Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
With your home value up again, you are sitting on a pile of money. So don't let it sit there. Use it. Willie Donick here for my friends once again at Loan Pronto. Introducing Loan Pronto's Equity Line of Credit program. You don't have to refinance, but you can access up to 97% of your home's value. Get cash now to pay off all your credit cards or do that home improvement project. Get your down payment for a new home or stash away for a safety net. You can get $50,000, even $100,000 or more out of your home. And the payments are crazy low. Think what you could do with $100,000 right now. Loan Pronto makes unlocking your equity easy, and they can probably even waive the appraisal. Don't just let all that home equity pile up. Turn your house into an ATM machine and get the cash you need. Call Loan Pronto now, 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Golfers, it's time to tee it up at Edwin Watts Golf Shops for the Callaway Trade-In Trade-Up event happening now through July 4th. Bring in any of your old clubs and receive a 50% trade-in bonus towards new Rogue ST Woods and Irons and Apex Irons. Both the Rogue and Apex families are designed with artificial intelligence for faster ball speeds. Swing by Edwin Watts Golf Shops and get your 50% bonus trade-in on Callaway Rogue, ST, and Apex Irons today. And while you're there, get custom fit for free. Edwin Watts Golf Shops, home of the 90-day satisfaction guarantee.
We here at 102.5 and 106.3 The Game are looking for our next great executive producer. Hey, it's Chase McCabe, the program director. If you think that's you and you think that you have the experience, the drive, and of course you share that love of sports, send your resume and cover letter to together@cromwellmedia.com.
If you suffer from joint pain, from arthritis, or an injury, you know the traditional treatments, pain meds, steroids, and then surgery, right? Willie Donick here with great news. Now there's a better way, and it's here now from the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. This is an advanced, exciting, and natural alternative that can give you lasting relief using your body's own healing power. Listen, steroid shots are toxic to your joints. Pain meds can be addictive, and nobody wants to go under the knife. It's 2022, and those old ways are out. The new way is in. Regenerative medicine, restoring and repairing damaged joint tissue using natural biologics. No drugs, no downtime, no surgery. QC Kinetics and their protocols can address any pain in any joint and give you the quality of life you deserve. So call the local medical professionals at QC Kinetics now. 615-249-4024. 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024 for QC Kinetics.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne.
NASCAR is back. Kyle Larson returns to Nashville Superspeedway a winner.
Nashville's exclusive home for NASCAR.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We're live from the Hillside Medical Game Studios, and you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Corey Curtis, News 2, will join us in just about 10 or so minutes. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman today. Now, a big offseason topic since we've seen the struggles that Traylon Burks has gone through, and mandatory rookie camp and mandatory mini camp and OTAs, is there's been a lot of concern about, is he going to be ready? There's also been a lot of discussion about, is Robert Woods, a 30-year-old wide receiver, going to be able to recover from an ACL injury and to be able to be a consistent role player in this Titans offense? A lot of questions and concerns surrounding the wide receiver position, which has been a position historically over the past couple of years that Titans fans have felt very good about with A.J. Brown. But with no A.J. Brown, there's so many question marks surrounding the wide receiver position, and seeing how much Tannehill struggled this past year, having a rotating carousel of wide receivers that are injured and back in the game and injured and back in the game, Julio Jones being one of them, a lot of Titans fans have wondered, is it time to get a little bit of help in the passing game? Is it time to bring someone in as a little bit of insurance for Robert Woods and for Traylon Burks, two players that Titans fans have question marks about, not just because they're new to the Titans franchise, but also because of health concerns, because Traylon Burks hasn't been able to stay consistently out on the field. So Pro Football Focus released an article highlighting one player that each team should trade for or acquire as a free agent. So, of course, I looked at the Tennessee Titans, and it says the Titans should sign wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. Says the AFC South isn't exactly chock full of wide receivers right now. The Titans ranked 26th in our wide receiver core rankings. Yikes. And if the Titans want to keep their hold on the division, it would behoove them to add another playmaker for quarterback Ryan Tannehill to join Robert Woods, of course, coming off of a torn ACL, and rookie Traylon Burks. And that's another part of this. I mean, I highlight his health concerns. He's a rookie. He didn't run routes at Arkansas. This is a completely new avenue for him, and he's going to have some growing pains, Traylon Burks, once he enters the league. Now, I asked TD yesterday for the TD Power Hour. I said, would Odell Beckham Jr. be worth the Titans' while to bring in this offseason? Here's what TD had to say.
Yeah, that would be something where you stockpile for down the line. It would be interesting. I just know for whatever reason he didn't hit his full potential there in a run-heavy offense with the Browns. But the Rams, they run the football, and he had a pretty good year that time with them. So I think that's something that if you want to boost in November, that's probably a good look.
Okay, so TD mentions, he had a solid season with the Rams this past year. Of course, fell short with the Cleveland Browns, but that feels like it's a trend in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns, but had a solid year with the Rams. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl before OBJ got injured, before he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, I mean, he was balling now. But TD mentioned something that I think is very important to highlight here. He says if you need a boost in November, and that's my biggest concern about bringing in Odell Beckham Jr. I just mentioned. He tore his ACL in February. So you're looking at absolute positive earliest coming back in November. And I would even argue it could be later than that. We hear Taylor Lewan saying when he was coming back from an ACL injury, he had a lot of hurdles to go through. We heard Bud Dupree this last season be incredibly honest and say, I rushed back from my ACL recovery, and that's why when I came back, I struggled so much. So November, I think, is even pushing it. I think that you could guarantee OBJ would be ready to go by the playoffs. So to me, the Titans would bring in a veteran wide receiver as insurance for Robert Woods and for Traylon Burks, and to at least add some experience and some talent on the depth chart at the wide receiver position. But if Odell Beckham Jr. isn't going to be ready to go until absolute earliest November, and let's not forget, OBJ isn't a spring chicken. I think OBJ is 29 years old, 28, 29 years old. So if we're going to use 29, okay. So if we're going to use the argument that we're concerned about Robert Woods being able to recover from an ACL tear that occurred in November at 30 years old, why aren't we applying that same argument to Odell Beckham Jr., who's only a year younger and tore his ACL 3 months later? I love Odell Beckham Jr. Don't get me wrong. I think we all understand that I am an LSU homer in this building.
Except for Ben Simmons.
He is the caveat there. You are 100% correct. But I love OBJ. I would love to cover OBJ. I think that he would be a great addition in terms of talent and experience in this wide receiver room. I just don't see it being worth whatever investment the Titans would put into him. And of course, it would be not very much. You wouldn't put a lot of money into Odell Beckham Jr. considering his injuries, but I just don't see how that would pay off if he can't be on the field consistently until maybe December or January.
Well, it would certainly continue John Robinson's fascination with acquiring or drafting injured players.
Fascination is a much more eloquent way of putting it than I think we say on this show.
Yes. Well, I was a wordsmith in a former life. So, yes, his fascination with injured players, whether he's drafting them or trading for them or signing them in free agency, that it would be par for the course for John Robinson to take a flyer on Odell Beckham Jr. And you're right that, it appears that he will not be ready for the start of the season. And if he's not ready until November 1st, let's just say, as an arbitrary date, what week of the season is that? 5, 6, 7?
In November?
Yeah, like what the first week of November. What maybe
probably 8 or
probably
9.
around 8.
Yeah, so you're almost, he's probably going to miss around the first half of the season. And
at the absolute least.
Yeah, so, would it be nice to unleash a healthy Odell Beckham Jr. to give the Titans, a kick in the arm, or shot in the arm rather, mid-season, yeah, sure. But you're also expecting an injured player to come in and learn an offense while having to rehabilitate. So it's not like he's going to be on the field, running routes in practice, at least not immediately. So, it sounds nice, but I don't see the fit there. I feel like if you had more stability in your wide receiver room, and you could bring him in, let's just use, for the sake of this conversation, let's use the Saints for example, because we're Saints fans. So the Saints have Michael Thomas. He's coming back from his own injury, but he's a veteran wide receiver. They have Jarvis Landry, and they have Chris Olave, who's a rookie. But you have two veteran receivers in Thomas and Landry on your team. So adding Beckham to that mix, I feel like would make sense down the line. With the Titans, you have a rookie wideout who has had some health issues to start his professional career. You already have a wide receiver with an ACL issue much further along. I just think that if the Titans had a better wide receiver group without Odell Beckham, it would make sense that you could stash him and bring him in the second half of the season. But I just think that because of the question marks, I'm not sure how much he would help, if that makes sense.
Let's see what Corey Curtis thinks about it. Corey Curtis, News 2, will join us coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on possible moves the Titans can make in the offseason, as well as his Predators and Philip Forsberg thoughts. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan, in for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Let's put the green flag in the air and turn them loose.
Nashville's home for NASCAR.
He's going to try to make a big move here.
It's brought to you by the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. We are your racing station.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And the Game Nashville app.
Hey, it's Chase McCabe here to tell you about Dr. Kelly Rice Family Cosmetic and Dental Sleep Medicine. Dr. Rice, listen, we all have cavities. But what's the best way to try and keep them from happening?
Cavities are like any other health condition. You don't really know you have one until it gets bad. Recently, I saw a patient for treatment that they had been putting off. Something that could have been simple to fix 6 months ago turned out to need a root canal and a crown. Postponing treatment costs more and takes time away from work.
Nobody wants a root canal, so you're right. Regular checkups are very important.
Well, we do things differently. I want to let people know that if they're afraid of pain or worried about the cost, they are not alone. Don't be embarrassed. We understand. Give us a call at 615-373-4488. That's KellyERice.com.
Dr. Kelly Rice Family Cosmetic and Dental Sleep Medicine. If you don't have dental insurance, no problem. Be sure to join their membership club. Just visit KellyERice.com or call 615-373-4488 now to schedule your cleaning and checkup. You'll certainly be glad you did.
Looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Built upon a solid foundation of cast iron and steel, the Kubota L-Series is part of our under 100 horsepower tractor lineup rated #1 for reliability. They feature powerful Kubota diesel engines and easy operation. The durable Kubota L-Series. Talk to your local Kubota dealer today to schedule a demo. Go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
Visit Coleman Tractor Company, your local Kubota dealer in Clarksville, Nashville, Paris, and White House.
This is your Racing Report with Chase McCabe.
This report is brought to you by the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Catch SRX at the Fairgrounds July 9th. For more information and for tickets, visit NashvilleFairgroundsSpeedway.racing. After a successful weekend at the Nashville Superspeedway, the NASCAR Cup Series will head to Road America and Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, to take on the road course. Chase Elliott is listed as the favorite and looks to go back-to-back after picking up his first Gibson guitar at Nashville last weekend. A handful of Cup Series drivers will look to get extra seat time around the road course by running the Xfinity race on Saturday. Some of those include Cole Custer and defending Cup Series champion Kyle Larson, who will drive the number 17 for Hendrick Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. You can catch Road America starting at 1 o'clock on Sunday on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. I'm Chase McCabe.
We want to hear from you.
Thanks for taking the call.
Join the conversation. Call or text at 615-737-1025. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 1025 and 1063 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman today. Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us now. Corey Curtis, presented by Smokeville Smoke Shop. Corey, first question for you that we were just discussing is the possibility that the Titans could bring in Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I have my thoughts on that, but your thoughts on bringing in OBJ in this offseason before training camp?
I don't see that he's a fit culturally, but obviously he's a guy who's had a lot of talent for a long time, and can make plays. And you'd have two receivers coming in off of torn ACLs. I don't know how great that is, and he's going to want to get paid. And so I don't know cap-wise how well that fits in as well.
But do you think it's even right for him to ask to get paid? Because I only think that wherever he goes, let's just say the Titans. Let's say the Titans sign him to a deal. I can't imagine it's going to be incredibly long-term. And considering this season, he would probably still be healing from an ACL injury for more than half of the season. I can't imagine that he would demand anything more than a couple $1 million a year.
Well, I can't imagine him wanting to go somewhere on a one-year deal. I mean, I guess that it's possible, and I don't know if his ego can take not getting paid.
That's fair.
I mean, I don't know that about him. I just know this: he flashed early in New York, was a total disaster in Cleveland, and had a nice, some nice games with the Rams, and seemed to be, recovering a little bit there in that situation. You've got Robert Woods, you've got Treylon. I mean, Robert Woods, you've got Treylon Burks. There are other guys out there, and I feel like when I look at the Titans' free agency and their draft classes, they got back to getting their kind of guys, and this would be stepping back into getting some of the kind of guys they got the last couple of years that didn't work out.
Right, because I look at this trade or this acquisition, and it feels very Julio-esque. Corey Curtis is with us. Corey, question for you. If it's not OBJ, do you think the Titans need to bring in anyone in this offseason?
Yeah, I think if it works, I mean, I would like to see them bring in a veteran receiver to add to the mix. And, Will Fuller is a guy who's come up over and over again, because I think Will Fuller works for them, and I think he works for Will Fuller. Because Will Fuller's never been able to make it through a full season. And I think they can make a strong case that, Will, we need you for 15 to 25 plays a game. And that's going to be the best way to get you through a full season. And that'll be the best thing you can do to make money the next year. And that would give them an experienced receiver who's explosive, who can take the top off of defense, and doesn't have to play every snap. And also, he's going to have to come down from the $10 million he made last year. And if he knows that's going to happen, because otherwise he'd be on a team by now. I just think that can be more of a win-win scenario to me. And there's other guys out there who can help, but he's the one that we've talked about most because I think it makes really a lot of the most sense.
Corey Curtis is with us. Corey, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest weakness in this Titans roster as currently constructed?
I think the biggest concern, obviously, the unproven wide receiver core kind of is the concern. But I think, those two offensive line spots, I would say I'm most concerned with the offensive line, because Taylor Lewan is coming off a subpar season. You like to think he's going to have a bounce-back year. But Ben Jones, who's been a warrior for this team, is not getting any younger. Can Nate Davis bounce back from COVID last year and have a better year this year? And then can those two guys, whoever you go with, fill the right tackle and left guard spots? I think, look, if you want Ryan Tannehill to have a better year than he had last year, weapons are a part of it, but being able to stand in the pocket and not get killed is the other part of it. So I think right now I'm actually more concerned with the 5 guys up front than I am with the guys on the outside.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Corey Curtis is with us. Corey Curtis, presented by Smokeville Smoke Shop. Corey, an absolute bombshell dropped yesterday. USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. Is this the end of college football as we know it?
Absolutely not. You know what this is? This is change, and change happens. It happens all the time. Look, it happened with the SEC. They added South Carolina. They added Arkansas. They went to 12 teams. They went to divisions. Now they're adding Texas and Oklahoma. They added Missouri. Change is inevitable. And eventually, we're going to wind up with mega conferences, and it's, are they 20? Are they 24? Are they 32? Eventually that's where we're going to head. I can see a 32-team SEC and a 32-team Big Ten. And then you know what's going to happen eventually? That'll change. Somebody will get upset, and they'll break off, and they'll form their own new league. But it's all driven about money. Anybody who's not in the SEC and Big Ten isn't trying to get in the SEC and the Big Ten right now. They're making a big mistake because they're going to be left without a chair when they done. A lot of people, clamoring to make that move, but it's not the end. It's just change. The games will go on. NIL isn't the end of college football, and realignment's not the change at the end of college football either. Look, the reason we had regional games before is because it wasn't as easy to travel as it is now. And believe me, the regionality of some of these conferences will get worked out when they add more teams. So I'm not nearly as worried about it. And also, I've seen this as inevitable for 5 years. So no big deal to me.
So I saw a Sportico report that said, basically in a nutshell, you could see Vanderbilt or schools like Northwestern or Indiana left out of the larger conversation of what is most likely inevitable to come next, whether that's a super conference, whether that's the Big Ten and the SEC joining forces, whether that's the ACC joining the SEC, whatever that might be. There was a Sportico report that said Vanderbilt could be left on the outside. I personally don't see any scenario in which Vanderbilt leaves the SEC, but do you?
Well, look, one area where Vanderbilt helps the SEC is with some academic credibility. I mean,
But do they care? Like, does a TV deal care about the academics
No,
of
the
Vanderbilt?
TV deal doesn't care. The TV deal doesn't care, and I don't know if the conference cares as much as it used to. Obviously, it's been important to the Big Ten and the Pac-12 for years that they be the right cultural fit. But, we all lament Vanderbilt and, how committed is the school to the process of competing athletics, of putting the money in to compete at athletics. I know they're doing some fundraising now. I know they're doing some work on some facilities now. But you know what would put that fundraising and that influx of cash into athletics into hyperdrive? The threat of being kicked out of the league and not getting that $50, $60, $70, $80 million a year check. That would get their attention in a hurry. To say, hey, you're not up to standard. We're going to kick you out, and we're going to add Arizona instead because they do this, because you haven't committed to the process of bringing the money that they can. And you know what? That would probably get Vanderbilt's attention to say, you know what, maybe we do need to spend the actual SEC money that we get, and maybe we do need to actually dip into our endowment a little bit to bring our athletics up to standard. I could be dead wrong on that, but I would think that the thought of losing that SEC paycheck would be terrifying.
Corey Curtis is with us. Corey, we're less than a week away from the NHL draft, and we're less than 2 weeks away from NHL free agency. What is your confidence level that a deal will get done or not with the Predators in Philip Forsberg?
99%.
You're not at 101?
No, Jared went to 101. I mean, look, I felt like this deal is going to happen all the time. I continue to feel like it's going to happen. I just feel like, they're going to take it to the last second. I think I said this on Robbie and Rexroad the other morning. Most of these deals, a lot of times, they don't get done until they have to. If you simply lock guys in a bathroom with a giant pitcher of water and, like, some hard-boiled eggs and said nobody comes out until you got a deal, we'd have deals so much faster. It'd be ridiculous. And so I just feel that, push comes to shove, they'll have a deal, they'll get through. One of the reasons that I really see them getting a deal as well is you don't hear any other teams mentioned with Philip Forsberg. Because usually when teams know a guy is leaving, you start to hear that, he's going to wind up with this team, or this team's watching that situation to see how it works out. We haven't really heard any of that. All we have heard is he's going to wind up back in Nashville. And look, it's not done until it's done, and I get that. So nothing is impossible, but I would be pretty darn surprised if he wasn't a Predator when this is over with.
The Predators traded Matthew Olivier for a 4th-round pick, and no, that was probably not the kind of sexy trade or sexy move that Predators fans wanted the Preds to make, but do you think that's just the first of many trades or moves to happen in this offseason?
It depends on what they're trying to get done. I mean, I guess, Adam is a way better source on that than for me. I mean, I know that only takes about $750,000 off the payroll, but it also adds an asset in the draft and a 4th-round pick, and that's one you can use or you can use to move up in the draft. David's never been afraid to make moves. And, I would think, he got his feet held to the fire a little bit after last season. We'll see if that has an impact on how aggressively he attacks this year. But he hasn't been shy to make moves in the past. So would I be surprised if there were more moves come? Nope. No, I would not. I think they know the direction they want to go. And I think that, they've never been shy to do the things to get them in that direction. So we'll wait and see.
It's a Fireball Hot Take Friday, Corey. What's your hot take?
No. You know what? It's that time. I have this hot take about once a year, but I think it's time to unload it. You know how we had the Great American Resignation a year or two ago? All those people left in August. The workforce is like 3 million people or whatever it was. We need to have the Great Sports Fan Resignation, because every year when I see all these like NBA contracts come up, and believe me, I'm for guys making as much money as they can. I am all about it. But what it gets me is when I see the 12th guy on the bench earning $10 million a year to do nothing, because that also tells me the owners got that much money on the other side. Like, the owners got as much money as these players do. And I'm not against how much everybody's making. What I'm against is how much they're all making, and yet they're still charging $65 for an upper deck seat with your back against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. They're pricing normal people out of being able to go to games or just the games comfortably without feeling they just got taken to the cleaners. Or, am I going to invest $400 on tickets, $500, $600 on tickets, and I got to worry if LeBron's even going to dress for this one?
And that's a total different story, is the regular season and the superstars, the quote-unquote load management. Like, give me a break.
But this, if we've got $10 million a year to give the last guy on the bench, we can lower ticket prices in the upper deck so that some normal people can go to games. It's not going to bankrupt the NBA to offer some $35 seats. And it's not just the NBA I'm talking about. I'm talking about a lot of sports. I mean, upper deck in the NFL isn't cheap anymore either. And I would like for just the average citizen to be able to go watch his favorite team play without knowing it's going to wreck the budget for the next 3 months when you put in tickets, parking, maybe buying my kid a hot dog, and God forbid I buy them a souvenir, because that's going to be $700. All of them, there is so much money there to be had, and like I said, the salaries prove it. These people make a ton of money, and the owners make a ton of money as well, and good for them, like I say. But they could cut some slack on some of the cheaper seats and make it available to some normal people, because my goodness, it's expensive. And I think everybody, if we would all just walk out and say no more, salaries are up. You see signs all over the place starting at $15 an hour. A few years ago, those jobs were $7, $8, $9 an hour. If we would all walk out and say, nope, not going to pay for those tickets, then they would have to come down.
I mean, I think that's fair. I think that it's fair. Corey, we appreciate you. We'll chat with you next week.
All right, thanks. Adam, you were so quiet. I barely knew you were there.
This was your segment, not mine.
Every segment's your segment, Adam. I'm just riding on your boat.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, thanks, Corey. Coming up next, I want to break down the Matthew Olivier trade and what that means for the Predators. Coming up next, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingadin for Jaron Stillman. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
Want the latest on the Predators from the people that cover them?
Heck of a year so far for the Predators. They've been so much fun to watch.
Join Robbie Stanley for Preds Insiders every Monday at 6.
I feel probably as good about this group of 6 on D.
Presented by Dr. Kelly Rice on Smashville's Best Sports Talk.
ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
The clock is ticking on Genesis Diamond's amazing finance offer. You have until 5 p.m. Saturday to take advantage of the hottest offer of the summer. 5 years, zero interest financing on practically everything in our showcases. Get in now and splurge. Maybe treat yourself. How about a stunning $12,000 designer ring, complete with a GIA diamond for just $200 a month? It's the smartest, easiest, and best way to buy. Nothing down and no interest for 5 years. But hurry, this incredible offer ends Saturday and will not be extended. Only at Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills and Cool Springs. On approved credit.
It's Family Leisure's 4th of July sale. Huge savings on spas, outdoor patio furniture, play gyms, and Sabre gas grills.
These warm summer nights are perfect for sitting outside.
Family Leisure's 4th of July sale has big savings on patio furniture from all the big brand names like Canament, Woodard, Jensen, and Apricity. There's more than 100 sets on display with free delivery.
What about the spas?
Right now, for the 4th of July sale, Family Leisure is discounting all their spas. Name brands like Viking, Artesian, and American Select. There are more than 40 spas on display and on sale.
What about pools?
Family Leisure has above-ground pools in stock and ready for installation in less than 10 days.
Wow, that's fast.
We really should look at the wood play gyms for the kids. Family Leisure has the Diamond Point swing set on sale at only $25.99 installed.
And maybe a new Sabre infrared grill, too.
It's Family Leisure's 4th of July sale, going on now at both huge locations, Franklin and Antioch.
Save big this 4th of July at Electronic Express. Get an LG 55-inch 4K TV for $399 or a Samsung black stainless washer dryer for $549 each. Electronic Express has huge savings in every department. Computers, appliances, 4K TVs, smart home, furniture, mattresses, and more. Don't miss out on an Xbox S bundle for just $389 or an Acer laptop for $229. Shop in-store or online with up to 36 months free financing. Electronic Express. We make celebrations happen.
Being present and in the moment for family activities was impossible because Will Burt was so focused on the constant pain in his leg.
My wife likes to take walks. I always kind of dreaded going on walks because they hurt. The boys both play baseball. I coach their teams. I was going to do them and be in pain and be uncomfortable and kind of sacrifice my own health.
An old Achilles injury left Will coping with agonizing pain until he discovered the natural biologic treatments at QC Kinetics. No surgery or steroids. The procedure took place in the office, and Will walked right out.
I feel great. There's no pain. There's no tenderness.
Patients like Will are feeling amazing and living their best lives.
Ironically, just got off the golf course today, so I think that's a good telltale sign that the Achilles is feeling better.
Don't be in pain another day. Call QC Kinetics for your free consultation. Call QC Kinetics, 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. 615-249-4024.
Sunday. The stars of the NASCAR Cup Series head to Road America for the Quick Trip 250. Coverage begins at 1 on your racing station. 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Hey Nashville, this is Vanderbilt head coach Jerry Stackhouse. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
We are your racing station. 102.5 and 106.3 The Game is Nashville's home for NASCAR. Tune in this Sunday at 1 p.m. for the Quick Trip 250. Also, you can join Chase McCabe every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. for Chase and Checkers as he talks to the drivers and gets you set for race weekend. NASCAR on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game is presented by Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. We were just out speaking with Corey Curtis, mentioned that the Predators traded Matthew Olivier for a 4th-round pick. Adam, in your opinion, the return for Matthew Olivier and the decision to trade Matthew Olivier, do you think it was fair? Your thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I actually thought that the Predators did pretty well in this trade, considering that Matthew Olivier has mostly been a minor leaguer for them. He did have some extended time in the NHL over the past few years, but the emergence, of Tanner Jeannot rendered Matthew Olivier, for lack of a better term, obsolete, in the sense that Olivier, not as well-rounded as Tanner Jeannot, not as offensively skilled as Tanner Jeannot. He's a great story. Mississippi born in Biloxi, Mississippi, when his father was playing for the ECHL Mississippi Seawolves. I believe he's the first Mississippi-born player to play and score a goal in the NHL. I think that's right. So a really great story. A really nice guy, fan favorite. But to get a 4th-round pick for a player that really didn't factor into their plans in the NHL, I actually think that was a nice piece of business by the Predators. As Corey mentioned, his cap hit is $750,000, so a negligible subtraction in terms of cap space. But now they have 2 4th-round picks in the draft next week, their own and Toronto's, because Columbus traded the Predators Toronto's 4th-round pick in that deal, so it'll be near the bottom of the 4th round. They also have 2 3rd-round picks. They, of course, do not have a 2nd-round pick for reasons that this show does not like to talk about. But going into the draft, as Corey said, that extra ammunition can be used to bolster the depth chart, the organizational depth chart. It can also be used to package for another pick to maybe move up in the draft if there's a player that they like that they think they can get. So yeah, I mean, all told, I it's not an exciting move by any stretch of the imagination, but I think a 4th-round pick for a minor league player, basically, with all due respect to Matthew Olivier, is not a bad thing at all.
So it's July 1st, so it would be I don't think that this is going to be the last of the Predators' offseason moves, whether that's trades or free agent acquisitions, whatever that might be. Obviously, Philip Forsberg is going to be at the top of the list of a lot of Predators fans of moves that they want to get done. Mm-hmm. But what do you think is the next move the Predators make? Is that a trade away from the team, or is that bringing more depth in?
I also think they have to, and this is something we don't talk about a whole lot just because we're so laser focused on Philip Forsberg, but there are restricted free agents that the Predators do need to re-sign that are relatively important. The most notable name is Yakov Trenin. Now, I don't expect Trenin to make a lot of money per season. I think on his last contract was making fewer than $1 million per season. I could see him making $2 something along those lines. He's a valuable player on that line.
I like Yakov Trenin.
Yeah, Trenin serves a purpose, and he plays his role quite well. So that's important. Another decision they have to make, a decision on Luke Kunin. Luke Kunin is a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, and I don't remember the date off the top of my head. I think it's coming up it's obviously coming up soon, of when teams have to extend qualifying offers to their restricted free agents. Now, a player can accept a qualifying offer, or they can decline it, and teams can continue to negotiate, which happens a lot. In Luke Kunin's case, here's the interesting part. Because he made $2.3 million per season on his now expiring contract. His qualifying offer, which, there's a calculation based on his experience and other factors. His qualifying offer is $2.3 million. So the Predators can offer him a qualifying offer, and he can take it, and he can play again under a $2.3 million contract. That's a little rich for Kunin, in my opinion, considering that he was by far the most disappointing player on the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm fine with moving forward with
last season. So they do have to make a decision there. And if they choose not to re-sign Luke Kunin, that's a couple of $1 million that they have to play with. But so I do think that, of course, we're thinking about Philip Forsberg. We're thinking about other free agents. We're thinking about trades. But they also have other decisions to make. The good news for them also is that their unrestricted free agent class, other than Forsberg, is rather unremarkable. Nick Cousins, Matt Benning, Ben Harper, David Riddick, Rocco Grimaldi. I can't imagine any of those players coming back. If I had to pick one of them to come back, I could see a place for Matt Benning as a depth defenseman. But now that Lauzon is signed for 4 years, I doubt that Benning is back. So other than Forsberg, there are no other UFAs of consequence that the Predators have to worry about.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your thoughts on the Predators. But coming up next, there are a lot of moves that the Predators could make this offseason, but there's one really massive move that I know a lot of Predators fans are very apprehensive to make. But would it really be the worst thing possible? I want to get into that with Adam coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vinkin for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game.
Join Chase McCabe for Chasing Checkers every Sunday morning at 8 for all the news in the world of motorsports.
Joey Logano gets the very first victory in the next-gen car
while hearing from the big names.
Two-time champion Kyle Busch.
Being able to bring NASCAR, the Cup Series, back to Nashville is cool.
It's Chasing Checkers, presented by Ample Collision Centers and the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
From the Fox 17 News Code Red Weather Center.
I'm Fox 17 News Code Red meteorologist Dan Guthrie. Up to 93 this afternoon, heat index up to 99. Partly cloudy skies with isolated to scattered showers heading into the early evening.
This weather report brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
Call the Happy Face Truck today.
New Chef's Chicken Sandwiches from Panera. Pan-seared chicken, a secret garlic aioli recipe, Parmesan crisps, and pickle chips all on a buttery brioche roll. Try one for only a $1 delivery fee when you order on their app. Restrictions apply.
Hi guys, it's Andrew with Hillside Medical Clinic. Is erectile dysfunction damaging your relationship? Are you sick of the pill and all the side effects? Well, welcome to the future. We have a major medical breakthrough. Hillside Medical Clinic uses the most advanced form of wave therapy. Backed by 60 clinical studies, our technology uses pressure waves to repair and open up blood vessels. We've helped countless men get rid of their ED. But what is the true end result? Their relationship, even their lives, improve drastically. If you're ready to regain your love life, call us right now, and not only will the assessment and ultrasound be free, we'll also give you a gift that produces immediate results in the bedroom. It almost never fails. This is worth $550, and it's free to callers right now. 615-576-5000. That's 615-576-5000. Put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and experience what I call the happiness ripple effect. Call Hillside Medical Clinic now, 615-576-5000.
For the love of the climb, for the love of the fall, for the love of knowing your kids' laughter is the sweetest music there is. For the love of Tennessee, travel safe. Brought to you by the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development, the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Robbie Stanley.
To avoid non-contact injuries and not repeat last year.
Joe Rexrode.
Just wait until next year's national TV schedule comes out.
Robbie and Rexrode. Mornings from 6 to 10 on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Stillman & Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Regardless of our My Choice Awards as to what we're doing, like competitive rebuild, which I used last year, the reality is every NHL team is building and rebuilding each and every year. Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup last year and had at least 6 players leave the team. So even they had to replace or rebuild to some degree. And it's not always a long, drawn-out process. It can happen quickly. Sometimes it's one good draft. Sometimes it's one good trade. But every team, no matter how successful, is always making tweaks. It's just the reality of the salary cap league that we are working in now.
That was David Boyle on the Predators' apprehension to rebuild, and it just in the salary cap era, it's sometimes just it's difficult to be able to acquire all the pieces that you might want. But I heard Robbie talking with David Beauclair on the morning show today about why they have an apprehension to rebuild. And I think it's also a feeling that a lot of Predators fans have too. And I think it's fair. And it's the fear that if you rebuild, then you stay bad. And Robbie mentioned the New Jersey Devils this morning, how the New Jersey Devils rebuilt and are still kind of stuck in that monotony of being not very good. This is what Robbie had to say this morning.
There are different ways to going about trying to compete for a Stanley Cup, but the bottom line is it's just way easier when you have guys like Nathan MacKinnon, like Sidney Crosby, like Connor McDavid. So how do you get there if right now, I guess the way I would describe the Predators right now is they are always going to be good enough as constructed, in my mind, to not get one of those guys.
Right.
Like they're just and going out and trying to trade for one of those guys. When teams find them, they're very hesitant on giving them up at that point. So how do you find one of those guys if you're not going to be bad enough? Like everybody talks about tanking, and I understand that. You also have to tank at the right time.
Right.
Like I think the Devils are a pretty good example of that right now. Like they were awful, and they got Nico Hischier, and they got Jack Hughes, both of which I think are good players, but they're not Nathan MacKinnon, and they're not Connor McDavid.
They're not Austin
Like
Matthews.
a lot of this is timing as well.
Okay, so I hear Robbie in saying that the Predators likely, at least in the near future, will not, at least on purpose, be that bad to be able to get a first overall pick in a Nathan MacKinnon, in a Connor McDavid, and that is exactly how Colorado and Edmonton got those players, is by being bad enough to get the first overall pick, or at least a lottery pick, and being able to draft those players. But the Predators can also orchestrate being that bad, and that is the rebuild and being able to give themselves the best possible opportunity at a first overall pick. I also hear Robbie's point that the New Jersey Devils had 2 first overall picks and picked Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. So, yeah, no, Jack Hughes had a 56-point season this past year. Nico Hischier had a 60-point season. So they're not bad players by any means, but they're not Connor McDavid, and they're not Nathan MacKinnon. So that is true that you do kind of have to time your rebuilds. And I think that New Jersey in 2019, at least, when they picked Jack Hughes first overall, you look at those picks and there's nobody in that draft that really stands off the page that you think, wow, New Jersey really missed there. But New Jersey picked Nico Hischier in 2017 in the same draft where Cale Makar was taken 4th overall. So New Jersey passed on Cale Makar, as did 2 other teams in the 2017 draft. So I hear, Robbie, that you need to time your rebuilds. You need to look and see who's coming up through the draft and which players you really truly do believe in. I think that's the case in 2019. But I look at 2017 and I say that's nobody's fault except the New Jersey Devils and passing on Cale Makar, because I think New Jersey would be in a much different situation if they had a Cale Makar on their team rather than a Nico Hischier. All respect to Nico Hischier, Cale Makar's a better player. He's a Norris Trophy winning player.
Yeah, and the NHL, in advance of the draft, they often like to do these redrafts where they go back to recent drafts and basically say, what would the top 10 look like if we could redo it based on how those players have performed since they've been drafted. And in 2017, as you said, Nico Hischier went number 1 to the New Jersey Devils. Here is the redraft according to NHL.com in 2017. Number 1, Cale Makar, originally selected number 4. Number 2, Miro Heiskanen, the Dallas defenseman, originally selected number 3. Number 3, Elias Pettersson from Vancouver, originally selected number 5. Then they have the Avalanche taking Robert Thomas, who went to St. Louis. Jason Robertson to Vancouver, who went to Dallas. Jake Ottinger, who also plays for Dallas, to Vegas. Nick Suzuki, who went to Montreal. Jeremy Swayman, who's the Boston goaltender. And Nico Hischier at number 9. So according to this redraft, Makar would go 1 and Hischier would go 9. So, to your point, Hischier is a good player. He still has room to grow, but he is not the player that changes a team's fortunes overnight, like Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or Nathan MacKinnon. New Jersey is an interesting example. I know that when fans talk about, rebuilds gone wrong, they always look at Buffalo, because Buffalo hasn't made the postseason in the past 10 or 11 years. And the problem with Buffalo was, first of all, they tanked for Connor McDavid. They ended up they did not end up picking number 1. They picked 2, and they took Jack Eichel.
That's another thing, is you're dealing with a lottery.
Right.
Which is difficult.
And Eichel is a fabulous player. The problem is for Buffalo is that they attempted to accelerate the rebuild by they traded for Evander Kane and Zach Bogosian. They from Winnipeg. They signed Kyle Okposo to a big money free agent deal. They traded for Jeff Skinner. Like, they tried to accelerate the rebuild, and it didn't work. And then they were locked into these expensive veteran contracts, and they had to basically start from scratch almost. And now they're trying to dig themselves back out of it. They traded Jack Eichel for Alex Tuck and Peyton Krebs. They had the number 1 pick in the draft last year. They took Owen Power, a defenseman from Michigan, and they're hoping that they can restart this process. But there are ways to do this that aren't incredibly painful. I mean, look at the Red Wings, for example. The Red Wings, have not been relevant for several years, but they also made the postseason 25 years in a row and won several Stanley Cups, although some of them came in the pre-cap era. So I see why some fans might be hesitant, and I agree with Robbie completely that the Predators are probably going to be good enough to either sneak into the postseason or just miss out on the postseason and pick in the 15, 16, 17 range, for as long as they so choose. But I just think that is not a realistic way to improve. And I'm not, and we talked about this the other day. Another thing that harms the Predators in terms of wanting to rebuild is that they're the players that teams would be interested in, or the players that they would try to sell off, are all locked in for several more years. Whether it's 3 years for Ryan Johansson, or 4 years for Matt Duchene, or 3 years for Mikhail Granlund, or 4 years for Colton Sissons. Oftentimes teams don't want those types of players with term. They want maybe 1 year or rental players that they can get out of quickly. So I just think that the way the Predators' cap situation is, I don't think they can rebuild, because I just don't think that there aren't many options to make those trades that gets them to the place where they're picking at the top of the draft.
And I guess the other point there too is Robbie saying you need to time your rebuild well, which I think is a very valid point. But I think you also have to trust your drafting. And I think that's another apprehension of a lot of Predators fans, is they feel that they don't necessarily trust not just David Poyle's free agent acquisitions or trading, but also the drafting. Because, I mean, you look at so many prospects that either the Predators traded for or drafted, and they haven't turned out. I would say most notably Eeli Tolvanen. And Eeli Tolvanen can still end up being a pretty solid player. But this past season, we were promised all of this greatness from Eeli Tolvanen that didn't necessarily come to fruition. So I think that's another element of it here, is when you rebuild, you have to draft well. And just how well can David Poyle draft, or how much do Predators fans at least trust David Poyle to draft well and orchestrate this rebuild? And I honestly, I don't know if I do.
Well, you look at the Edmonton Oilers. There was a period of time, I think it was four times in 6 years, that the Oilers had the number 1 pick in the NHL draft. So they had 4 shots at getting their franchise player. And one could argue they only I would say maybe they hit on 1.5. Connor McDavid, clear-cut generational player. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been a very good player for that organization. He's not on Connor McDavid's level, nor is he on Leon Draisaitl's level. I believe it was a second or third pick. But he's been a very good, solid player for that organization since he's been drafted. Then you had Taylor Hall, who didn't really pop in Edmonton, traded to New Jersey, had an MVP season for John Hines in New Jersey, traded to the Coyotes. Now he plays for, then he signed with the Sabres, and then now he plays for the Boston Bruins. So he's moved around quite a bit. And look, he's been an MVP. Not very many players can say that. Active players can say that. So there's that. But he didn't work out for Edmonton. And then you have Nail Yakupov, who was a bust by every definition. So they had 4 shots at the number 1 pick, and they hit on maybe 1.5. So even when you're picking at the top of the draft, you have to be careful. If you're picking later, you hope to find value and those diamonds in the rough, so to speak. But even players who get picked at the top of the draft are no sure thing. Edmonton needed 4 cracks at it and got one, like I said, 1.5 good players out of it.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get your thoughts on this coming up next. Plus, I have a few concerns about the Predators. Are those valid concerns, or am I overreacting? I'll present my concerns to Adam, and he will let me know if they're fair or not. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
Heads up. 106.3 FM is a new way to hear 102.5 The Game from downtown Nashville to Spring Hill on I-65 and on I-24 to Murfreesboro.
Make sure you have that preset on your radio dial.
We're making it even easier to listen to Nashville's best sports talk.
This is going to be awesome. It's like, yes.
Tune in to 106.3.
That's what makes this team better.
And hear the difference.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety in school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF on the ground in Ukraine. We won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/action.
This is Chef John from Kitchen Notes at the Omni Nashville. Inviting you to come join us for breakfast and lunch. We are offering some exciting new menu items. For breakfast, we have a smoked prime rib hash. Comes with a sunny side up egg, hominy, caramelized onions. It's a great start to your day. We are featuring a sourdough pancake made with a sourdough bread starter. It's a fun spin on the classic buttermilk pancake. As always, Kitchen Notes is serving biscuits all day. Come join us and create a memorable experience here at the Omni Hotel. Food is all about memories for us. We'd like you to start a new memory here at Kitchen Notes in the Omni Hotel.
Breakfast at Kitchen Notes in the Omni Nashville Hotel.
Hey, Willie Donick here. Are you feeling the sting of higher interest rates and higher costs? Those credit cards and other loans are costing more and more every month, and inflation is making everything else more expensive. Your home can save you right now. Your home value is up, and there's a ton of cash in it that you can access with Loan Pronto. Loan Pronto specializes in zero-cost cash-out home refis. You can get tens of thousands in as little as 2 weeks. Pay off those 23% rate credit cards and other loans. Consolidate everything into one super low payment. People who do this usually cut $800 or more from their monthly budget. If your home mortgage rate goes up a point or so, it's offset by your credit card rate going to zero. So call Loan Pronto now and unlock that equity and wipe out the bad debt. Do it now. You can even skip your next 2 house payments. Call 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Smokeville Smoke Shop has been serving Hendersonville and Metro Nashville since 2015 and is committed to providing high quality, hands-on, and personable customer service. Stop into Smokeville Smoke Shops in Hendersonville, Gallatin, Hermitage, and Goodlettsville to try any of their wide selection of locally sourced products and selection of top nationwide brands including vapes, hookah, hand-blown glass, detox systems, e-juices, kratom products, leaf wraps, a dab bar at the Hendersonville location, and much more. Visit Smokeville Smoke Shops today.
7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF, UNICEFUSA.org/action.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne.
Robbie and Rex Road to DDC.
Stillman and Company. Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball. The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We're live from the Hillside Medical Game Studios, and we are streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live All of our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry, Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman today. Now, Adam, allow me to use you as free therapy, so to speak, a little bit today, because I have several concerns about the Predators, and I don't know if those are necessarily rooted in simply just fear and worry, or if there's actually a legitimate core issue there, either within ownership or within management or within the team. So I'm going to present to you some of my biggest concerns about the team, and you tell me, are they valid concerns? Am I overreacting? I also have a few things that I think a lot of Predators fans, or things that I have heard around the Predators circles that a lot of people are worried about, that I just simply am not worried about those. And you decide if I should worry about them or not. Should those be at the top of the list of things that I should worry about? So first concern for you. I know yesterday we talked about what is the biggest position of need for the Predators. You said top 6 forwards. That's one of my concerns as well. Is it a valid concern?
Yeah, it is, because even if Philip Forsberg returns, you still have at least one, if not two, holes on your second line. Now, I personally believe that Philip Tomasino deserves an opportunity to play in the top 6. I think he had a solid rookie season, for a player of his caliber, and he did a lot of his playing time. He received a lot of playing time in bottom 6 capacities at 5-on-5. I do think he has earned the right to at least start in the top 6 role. Whether he can hold on to it, that'll be a question for the season, when the season starts, rather. But, I think if you were to dig into the numbers, I'm sure, and you look at, the fancy stats for Forsberg and Duchesne with Granlund, basically, let me start that again. If you look at the numbers, when Granlund and Johansson are not playing with both Forsberg and Duchesne, I'm sure whichever center is not playing with them, their numbers decline precipitously. And I think that really the Predators were, I would say a one-line team. I think the Sissons line with Trenin and Jeannot is a really good line, but it's a third line. I think that I think that scoring is an issue that this team needs to shore up by finding players with finishing talent, whether in a trade or free agency. So, because Luke Kunin and Eeli Tolvanen, we talked about Luke Kunin earlier, we talked about Eeli Tolvanen yesterday. I don't think either of those players has what it takes to alleviate those concerns. So, if you're concerned about it, I think that's a reasonable concern.
And you bring up Philip Tomasino, and that brings me kind of to my next concern, and that is the usage and the development of some of these young players. Because I kind of all season I was wondering, where is Cody Glass, for example, Philip Tomasino? I think Philip Tomasino has a bright future in the league, and if that is with the Predators, why isn't he utilized more?
Yeah, I could certainly quibble with John Hines' decision to play Luke Kunin in the top 6 as much as he did. Tolvanen is more of a top 6 player just in terms of his natural skill. Kunin would not have looked out of place on a fourth line. Production is with or without production. When you look at some of the younger players, I think Tanner Jeannot is obviously a great story. I think Yakov Trenin plays his role to a T. Alex Carrier was on the all-rookie team and I think held his own against tough competition on a shutdown pair with Matthias Ekholm. I think Dante Fabro made incremental progress. I certainly think he was better this season than he was last season. But yeah, none of those players, maybe with the exception of Tanner Jeannot, in terms of production, none of them exploded. I do think Carrier did have a solid season. Now, I've said that I would prefer the Predators to acquire a top 4 caliber defenseman that would allow one of Carrier or Fabro to play on the third pair. But I don't think that Carrier was out of his depth on a pair with Matthias Ekholm. You mentioned Cody Glass, and Cody Glass, I think, and context is important when talking about Cody Glass. Cody Glass suffered a serious, multiple, if I'm not mistaken, serious knee injuries during his time with the Vegas Golden Knights. So when he was acquired by the Predators last summer, he really hadn't played that much hockey in recent seasons. He goes down to the American League. I believe he led the Admirals in scoring this season. I think he was close to a point-per-game player. And, he signs basically a qualifying offer with the Predators. I would expect Cody Glass to get more playing time this year. But I think Cody Glass, how he performs this season, if he sticks in the NHL, which I think he should, I think that will go a long way in determining how well the Predators do, specifically John, with developing these young players. So I am not as concerned about that as others might. I think that the young players they have, considering their talent levels, played as well. A lot of them played as well as I think they could have. I don't think, maybe with the exception of Eli Tolvanen, rather, I think everybody else sort of played up to their capabilities.
My next concern, top 4 defensemen. I hear the argument for Alexander Carrier, and I don't necessarily believe in Dante Fabro, and I think Alexander Carrier will be fine. But I think that this Predators team needs a legitimate top 2 defenseman to pair with Roman Josi. Is that a fair concern?
I would say so. I would be less concerned about it than I would be about the top 6 wingers. But, like I said, if you look at some of the fancy stats, Ekholm and Carrier as a defensive pair were pretty solid. They weren't anything spectacular, but I think they did their job fairly well facing tough competition. For me, I would probably if I had to choose how this hypothetical top 4 defenseman, if I had to choose whether he played with Roman Josi or Matisse Ekholm, I would say Roman Josi. I think that Dante Fabro would be better off playing on a third pair. I remember when he first came to the Predators, he played on the pair with Dan Hamhuis. I thought it worked out really well for Dante. I think Mark Borowiecki can provide a similar, partnership as Dan Hamhuis with Dante Fabro. So I would look for a defenseman that's more defensively oriented, that can play with Roman Josi to allow Roman Josi to do Roman Josi things. So I would say less concern than top 6 wingers, more concern than the development of young players. So I would put that in the middle.
Okay, that's fair. Last one for you in terms of my concerns. I'm concerned about how sustainable John Hines' physical style of hockey is. I think that I attribute the Predators' drop-off later on in the season to the fact that they were just gassed. So I'm concerned about how this team can execute John Hines' physical style of play.
And I'll throw in UC Saros' workload in there as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I would say that UC Saros' workload, was of moderate concern. His injury had nothing to do with that, but statistically he did decline as the season progressed, and that's not all on him. I think the team's defensive play in front of him also declined as the season progressed, but he was erasing a lot of mistakes early on, and that wasn't the case down the stretch. He started, I believe, 67 games last season, which were the most in the league. I would like that number to be no higher than 60, preferably under 60. So that would mean if Connor Ingram is the backup, Connor Ingram is starting between 22 and 28 games or something like that. And I think that would be fine. So I would say UC Saros' usage is of moderate concern. The identity, the playing style of John Hines, I do think it suits this team well. I do think that in some ways, I remember Barry Trotz, before he was let go in New York, was talking about this a little bit as well, that Barry Trotz plays a similar hard-nosed, grinding style, and he admitted that playing that way over an 82-game season can be taxing. So I am by no means an X's and O's expert. I can understand why you and others are concerned about whether or not this heavy forecheck, cycling kind of game, can be of a detriment to, the team playing it as well as the team playing against it. But I'd like to see what happens this season first. Just because this is the first time we saw John Hines' system in a full 82-game season. I would be interested to see if he makes any tweaks during training camp and if that changes. If the things are the same this season, maybe you can have a little bit more concern. I'm not as concerned about that as everybody else. I think the way he has them play does suit a lot of their games. So I'm less concerned about that than I am about Saros' usage. So I guess I'm ranking most concerned to least concerned. I guess I would say most concerned, need for a top 6 forward. UC Saros' usage. Top 4 defensemen. Development of young players, and whether the system is of detriment to the team playing it.
Okay, that's fair. I have a couple things that I'm not necessarily concerned about, but am I wrong in thinking that? Should I be concerned about these things? We'll get into that with Adam coming up next, plus your phone. So if you have a Predators thought, make sure to get it in 615-737-1025. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vinkin in for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
The college football season never stops. ESPN college football analyst Trevor Manich joins Stillman and Company every Tuesday at 4:30.
They've got to do what Nick Saban in Alabama has done so successfully over the last 10 years.
Presented by Houston Clinic on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Don't miss the deals at Mattress Firm's July 4th sale. Get a king bed for a queen price and save up to $500 on select mattresses.
102.5 The Game is teaming up with Newton Motor Group and Souls for Souls to provide shoes for children experiencing homelessness in Nashville and the surrounding area. With school coming back, our goal is to raise $20,000, which will provide 1,000 pairs of shoes for kids. Please help however you can by going to thegamenashville.com/shoes. All donations go directly to Souls for Souls to give shoes to children in Middle Tennessee. thegamenashville.com/shoes.
Hey, it's Jared for TriStar Moving. If you're looking to move, you need to give my friends at TriStar Moving a call. At TriStar Moving, you'll get 5-star service throughout the entire process. Everything will be taken care of, from covering your floors, banisters, railings, front door thresholds, furniture, TVs, and more. They took great care of my move and made it as stress-free as possible. If you're looking to move, give TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit them at nashvillemoving.org/radio and get 5% off your entire move. TriStar Moving, my official movers.
This is Ryan Burke, marketing consultant with Cromwell Media. Like many of you, I'm new to town. I relocated here last year and started my career at Cromwell Media. Every day is different in this role. You meet and learn about so many types of businesses and work alongside the likes of the Nashville Predators and Nashville Sounds. Plus, you get the opportunity to be a part of so many big events in town. Are you looking for a little excitement in your career? Come on, have some fun working in media advertising at Cromwell Media. Email us at together@cromwellmedia.com. That's together@cromwellmedia.com.
For the love of Tennessee at dawn. For the love of the fight. For the love of having nowhere else you'd rather be. For the love of Tennessee. Travel safe. Brought to you by the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development, the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
When Smashville wants to rock.
I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Looking to the sky to save me, looking for a sign of life, 'cause it's too cold for you here.
We are Nashville's rock station. 102.9 The Buzz. Never miss a moment of the show.
What is this? Check it out.
Subscribe to the Stillman and Company podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
This season was the full realization of
what owners and players wanted coming out of the 2004-05 lockout, which was to open up the game, eliminate the clutching and grabbing and everything, and referees for 2 seasons called penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty to get it out of the game, and it trickled down to the lower ranks of the game. And what you've seen now is a whole generation of players who grew up with room to skate, to be creative, to do those sorts of things, and maybe this is the beginning of an era where you can win cups with just a good goalie.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the Preds have that much more work to do because they rely so heavily on their goalie right now. They relied on Pekka for years after 2017. They relied incredibly heavily on UC Saros this year. And maybe that's not the game anymore.
That was David Beauclair this morning on Robbie and Rex Road talking about the path to a Stanley Cup. Can you win a Stanley Cup with just a good goalie? And I would argue, I look at what the Colorado Avalanche did this past year winning the Cup and also how dominant they were in the years before. And yes, the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to win a Stanley Cup with Andrei Vasilevskiy in net because he is that good, but not just because it's Andrei Vasilevskiy. It's because they have a good team around him. And no, Darcy Kemper, the Colorado Avalanche goaltender, is not any sort of, Vezina finalist, but he didn't need to be because they had that many good players on the ice. And then I always hear the St. Louis argument. Well, Jordan Binnington stole St. Louis a cup. And I would probably agree that St. Louis team wasn't good enough to win a cup just on their own, but they had plenty of good players on the ice. Look at Pat Maroon. He was on that 2019 team and who also contributed to those 2020 and 2021 Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cups. So I don't know if I totally agree with the fact that you can win with just good goaltending. Sure, a good goaltender doesn't hurt. I mean, look at the New York Rangers. They were able to get pretty far in the playoffs with a lights-out goalie. But they didn't win the Stanley Cup because they didn't have good enough pieces around the goalie to win. So that's why when I present to you, Adam, the things that I'm not necessarily worried about, it's the goaltending and all the way around. I'm not worried about UC Saros, and I'm not worried about the backup goaltending. I'm more so worried about the pieces on the ice because I don't think that you can simply win a cup with just goaltending. But am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're not. And UC Saros, he, as I said, he started more games than any other goalie in the league. And he also stole more games than any goalie in the league. And there is a fancy stat for that. And I won't get too much into it. But basically, UC Saros won more games almost single-handedly for his team than any other goalie in the league. And a lot of that came in the first half of the season when the Predators were playing, above their, punching above their weight, so to speak. Look, you think back to 2017, starting with 2 shutouts by Pekka Rinne in Chicago, and that Predators team in 2017, they were an opportunistic team. I mean, think about the players that were scoring goals for that team, game-winning goals for that team. I mean, you had your usual suspects, your Philip Forsbergs, your James Neals, your Mike Fishers, but then you also had Harry Zolnarchuk and Cody McLeod and Vernon Fiddler and Austin Watson. But Pekka was the backbone of that run, and things did not go well for him in Pittsburgh in that series, and that's why they ultimately lost the Stanley Cup. But even in the deciding game, which was scored on a ridiculous, geometric, bounce off the back type of goal by Patrick Hornquist, Pekka played his guts out in that game too. So yes, it is possible for a goaltender to be the sole reason that a team wins a championship, but when you look at recent champions, the goalie plays a big part in it, but, he has not been necessarily the reason, whether it was Andrei Vasilevskiy or Darcy Kemper or Matt Murray or Braden Holtby. I mean, keep in mind, when the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018, Braden Holtby didn't start that postseason. Philip Grubauer did. And Holtby came in once Grubauer struggled and then, held it down for the rest of the postseason. But they had good players in front of them, whether it was Alex Ovechkin, Nick Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Braden Shen, Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon. Those are the catalysts. Those are the difference makers, and the Predators don't really have those players, at least not to that same level.
Another thing that I'm just not really that worried about, that I think there's two big groups in the Predators fan base. There's a group of fans that agree with me, and there's a group of fans that vehemently disagree with me. But I am not concerned about the change in ownership of the Predators. I think a lot of fans are concerned about Bill Haslam coming in. I think a lot of fans are concerned about the fact that he's coming in either in increments over the next couple of years, or the fact that he is not coming in immediately to make changes, or some fans are worried that Bill Haslam will run the Predators in the same way that Jimmy Haslam runs the Cleveland Browns, which is not very good. But I think that it will be fine. I think that I think the gradual transition of power is ultimately a good thing. I'm just simply not concerned about change of ownership, and I really, honestly, I'm kind of excited about it. No disrespect to Herb Fritch and what he has done with this team, but I see a lot of the things, I'm looking at my list of things that I'm concerned about, and I'm thinking how many of those things could just be changed by at least some fresh ideas and new faces in terms of ownership in the front office for the Predators. So I'm just not worried about Bill Haslam coming in and taking over Herb Fritch's shares of the Predators.
Well, I'm not sure what those concerns would be. Like those who have expressed concern about ownership changes, what are their concerns?
Whether they're concerned that he'll come in and run the team poorly, that he will be more hands-on than maybe Herb Fritch.
I think most Predators fans want an owner who's more hands-on. That's the sense that I get. I think that, I think one of the criticisms of the Predators ownership group currently is that they are basically invisible. I mean, if you were to line up, if you were to do a police lineup, you see in all the procedural shows where all of the people stand against the wall, and then they have
number 4.
Yeah, if you had Herb Fritch and 5 other men who look like Herb Fritch stand on one of those against one of those walls, how many Predators fans would actually be able to tell you who Herb Fritch is?
I'm gonna say not very many, because I don't even know if I could.
Right. So I think having first of all, having an owner who, was the governor of your state, it certainly lends to, visibility, and who's to say what kind of owner Bill Haslam will be. But I think an owner who's it doesn't necessarily have to be hands-on. I think you need an owner who's more visible, who speaks directly to fans. And, not every owner is Jerry Jones. I know that's the extreme example. Bill Haslam is not going to be Jerry Jones. No one can be Jerry Jones, or Mark Cuban or someone like that. That's not going to happen. I do think that a lot of Predators fans want ownership who will speak to the direction of the franchise versus just allowing David Poile to be the spokesperson about the hockey operations. I think an owner who takes more of an interest in that, and is more open with fans about where the team is going is a good thing. So I don't see why fans would be concerned about it at all.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next today is Belmont's official first day in the Missouri Valley Conference, so we will welcome in President of Belmont, Dr. Greg Jones, to come in and talk about their move to the Missouri Valley Conference. We'll get into that coming up next, plus your phones as well and your thoughts on the Predators. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman. It's 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
This is Colton Sissons, and this is Smashville.
Feeds now Sissons coming on for the left circle, and Colton Sissons puts it in the net.
This is the flagship of the Nashville Predators radio network. ESPN 102.5 The Game.
1025 The Game is teaming up with Newton Motor Group and Souls for Souls to provide shoes for children experiencing homelessness in Nashville and the surrounding area. With school coming back, our goal is to raise $20,000, which will provide 1,000 pairs of shoes for kids. Please help however you can by going to thegamenashville.com/shoes. All donations go directly to Souls for Souls to give shoes to children in Middle Tennessee. thegamenashville.com/shoes.
Friday night fireworks are back at First Horizon Park. Watch the skyline light up with a spectacular show following the Nashville Sounds versus Indianapolis Indians. First pitch is at 7:05, and the fireworks will start when the game ends. $10 tickets are available now at NashvilleSounds.com.
It's Family Leisure's 4th of July sale. Huge savings on spas, play gyms, and Sabre gas grills. Big savings on patio furniture from all the big brand names with free immediate delivery.
Well, what about the spas?
Family Leisure is discounting all their spas. There are more than 40 spas on display and on sale.
What about pools?
Above ground pools in stock and ready for installation in less than 10 days. Diamond Point Swing Set on sale at only $25.99 installed.
Family Leisure's 4th of July sale going on now at both huge locations, Franklin and Antioch.
312 Pizza Company is Nashville's authentic Chicago pizzeria, and they're now hiring. Work for a family-owned business and be a part of their incredible team. 312 Pizza Company is hiring for all positions, including host, waitstaff, bartenders, cooks, and more. 312 Pizza Company offers health insurance and pay time off to full-time employees. Contact Kimberly at 615-730-7888 or email at contact@312pizzaco.com. 312 is an equal opportunity employer.
Ever wonder what toys do when people aren't around? With the Nashville Symphony performing the score live, Disney Pixar's Toy Story answers that question with a fantastic, fun-filled journey, viewed mostly through the eyes of two rival toys. Woody, the lanky, likable cowboy, and Buzz Lightyear, the fearless space ranger. Toy Story in concert with the Nashville Symphony, July 8th through the 10th, including a Sunday matinee performance. Presented by Disney Concerts. Get your tickets now at NashvilleSymphony.org.
When you want to rock.
Let's go, don't wait. This night's almost over. Do all the monsters come out at night? Why do we sleep when we want to?
We are Nashville's rock station. 102.9 The Buzz.
Friday night fireworks are back at First Horizon Park. Watch the skyline light up with a spectacular show following the Nashville Sounds versus Indianapolis Indians. First pitch is at 7:05, and the fireworks will start when the game ends. $10 tickets are available now at NashvilleSounds.com.
Your home for Hit City is 94.9 The Fan.
Your Nashville Sounds continue their series at First Horizon Park against the Indianapolis Indians.
Swing and a miss, strike three. Sounds win.
Coverage begins at 6:50.
On your home for Sounds baseball, 94.9 The Fan and The Fan app.
Hey, Nashville, this is Dan Lebitard. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Stillman and Company, 102.5 and 106.3. The Game. Today is a big day, historic day in Belmont Athletics. It is their official first day, and as a member of the Missouri Valley Conference, and joining us now is Dr. Greg Jones, president of Belmont University. Appreciate you joining us, Dr. Greg Jones. First question for you is, this is a huge day for Belmont Athletics. Just how significant is this move, in your opinion, from the Ohio Valley Conference to the Missouri Valley Conference?
Well, it's great to be with you, and it's a huge day for us. It enhances our competition level. It expands our footprint and our national visibility. It's a league that typically in both NCAA men's and women's basketball is a 2 or 3 bid league. It's just a great day all the way around, and it'll really be a significant marker for Belmont as we move to the future.
And Belmont basketball, both on the men's and women's side, has made significant strides, and they've been incredibly competitive, at least in the Ohio Valley Conference. What is this move to the Missouri Conference mean, at least in the significance, specifically in the basketball programs?
Well, for both programs, it means we're going to have to bring our A game every game. The competition level in the Missouri Valley Conference is truly outstanding, and both our men's and women's programs have done some extraordinary growth over the last several years. Our women's team upset Oregon in the first round of the NCAA tournament and came within a hair's breadth of beating Tennessee on Tennessee's court in the second round. And I think this is going to give us competition throughout the season that will prepare us for NCAA tournament play in even stronger ways.
Yeah, it's definitely a more competitive basketball conference, looking at most notably Loyola Chicago, at least on the basketball side of things. But since you announced this move to the Missouri Valley Conference about a year ago, what has the response been like?
There's been tremendous excitement from our coaching staffs all across our sports, from the student body, from our Bruin supporters. There's just been a ton of excitement and momentum building toward this next year and moving into this new conference. And we know it's going to require us to grow and to step up, and all our coaches and student athletes and all of our supporters are really excited about doing so. The Missouri Valley also matches us really well in terms of the quality of the institutions, and we're just really proud to be associated with the universities that are part of the Missouri Valley.
And how was your parting from the Ohio Valley Conference? Was it an easy move to make, and how did you land on Missouri Valley?
Well, it was amicable parting. We really honor the work of our partners in the Ohio Valley Conference, and we had some very good years of competition with them. Murray State is moving with us from the Ohio Valley to the Missouri Valley. They approached us a little over a year ago to see if we had any interest, and it seemed like a really great fit. It's a basketball-centric conference. It exposes us to Chicago and St. Louis as major markets that we also recruit students from. And so when they approached us, it really became a decision of we were good and welcome and had great relationships in the Ohio Valley Conference, but this really gave us an opportunity to take a significant leap in competition level and visibility, and it seemed the right move given the momentum that we've had both in our athletics programs as well as a broader university to take this step now.
And it absolutely will be a significant leap in competition. But you're looking at a very accomplished team, both on the men's and women's basketball sides. The men's basketball, 9 NCAA tournament berths and 1 at-large bubble in each of the last 4 seasons. So what are your expectations in this first year of Belmont Athletics in the Missouri Valley Conference?
We hope that they will be a top-tier team, both men's and women's basketball. Casey Alexander, our men's coach, and Bart Brooks, our women's coach, have both had tremendous success, and they're excited about the quality of their teams this coming year. And I would just say that, we're hoping that the move to Missouri Valley will help us increase our profile for recruiting top talent. But one of the things that I would note is that both our men's and women's teams often outplay other teams that have more talent because we play really well together as a team. We're often in the top 10, both in men's and women's basketball, in assists, and that shows the kind of teamwork that we have and the character of our student athletes. And so we really believe that while the talent level is going to be really strong on both the men's and women's side, there's a really good chance for us to finish in the top tier. And we're about winning championships in all of our sports. And so we're going to be setting our sights to win the Missouri Valley, even in this first year in both men's and women's basketball.
And from this move from the Ohio Valley to the Missouri Valley, how would you define success, and how is that different in this new conference for you all?
Well, success for us will always be marked by the quality of our performance, whether we win or lose, that we do it with excellence and that we do it the right way. We also measure our student athletes' performance by how well they're doing in the classroom, and we're not going to short-circuit that. We've won conference championships in academic performance of our student athletes 19 out of the last 21 years. And so we're going to continue to measure it in that way. But we want to finish in the top tier in all 17 sports that we compete in, a top 3 finish in as many sports as we possibly can. And we believe we can do that. We've got outstanding student athletes, outstanding coaches, and we really want them to perform with high quality. But it's not a win-at-all-costs kind of mindset. We're about forming people of character and academic success for the long term.
Dr. Greg Jones, president of Belmont University, is with us. So I guess on more of a broad spectrum, how do the athletic programs showcase the goals and aspirations of the university?
It's a great question, and at a place like Belmont, it's just hand in glove. That, as I've already mentioned, we have student athletes who excel in the classroom and in performance in athletics, and just high quality people. The teamwork that they demonstrate, if you think about leadership in organizations, whether for-profit companies or nonprofit organizations, the kind of teamwork that you learn in athletics translates extraordinarily well into leadership after they graduate. Conley Chin, who just graduated from Belmont, was a 4.0 undergrad student, first team all-conference basketball player, was named the National Student Athlete of the Year by the NCAA. That's the kind of quality people that we have. They represent Belmont at our best, and we're so proud. And Conley's just one of many student athletes who excel in so many different ways. And when I spent time around the various student athletes on all our teams, I'm so impressed by the quality people they are, by their perseverance and all the hard work they do to excel in athletics, and the ways they represent themselves and represent Belmont off the court.
Yeah, Belmont President Dr. Greg Jones is with us, and I guess my just kind of a broad question for you. What are you most looking forward to in terms of this move into the Missouri Valley Conference? What are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to getting to know these new schools and their teams. I've enjoyed getting acquainted with the presidents and athletic directors as we've been moving into the conference, but I'm planning to accompany teams on a number of our away trips because I really want to see what the environment is in these other institutions and what they do well and what we can learn from and how we can continue to grow. I think there'll be some great rivalries developed. We'll carry our rivalry with Murray State with us into the Missouri Valley, particularly in men's basketball. But we're looking forward to developing new rivalries and really learning and growing as we look at this new footprint that will be increasingly Illinois, Missouri, and Iowa.
Yeah, absolutely. And the significance of bringing Murray State with you. Murray State is another very competitive basketball program, most notably on the men's side of things. So how is the significance of moving over to the Missouri Valley Conference with Murray State? How does the significance of that?
Well, it means that long-standing rivalry will continue, and it'll continue to grow and deepen. Some of our fans were a little grumpy when Murray State joined because they thought this meant that we wouldn't have to keep playing them because particularly this past year they had our number in men's basketball. But it's a great rivalry. It's great for both schools. It's great for college basketball, and we're excited to have that continue on into the Missouri Valley Conference. And, adding Murray State just increases the visibility and reputation of men's basketball in the Missouri Valley Conference. It's been a 2 or 3 bid league, and the Missouri Valley Conference has performed really well in the men's tournament. In fact, the statistics for first-round victories by Missouri Valley Conference teams in the NCAA men's tournament is better in recent years than the ACC or SEC or Big Ten or Big 12. So it's a very competitive conference, and we're thrilled to have Murray State coming in with us.
Again, Belmont President Dr. Greg Jones is with us. I know we have a lot of people listening in the Nashville community that are looking to support and are very excited about the future of Belmont athletics. So what can you tell them to look forward to in this next year of Belmont athletics?
Yeah, we'd love for you to come out to see us perform in a variety of sports, whether it's in men's and women's soccer over in Rose Park or men's baseball or women's softball in track and field, but especially at the Curb Events Center for men's basketball and women's basketball. We're going to be playing home games against some really high-quality teams, and they're going to be, really intense contests that will be a great treat for fans of basketball in the Nashville and greater Middle Tennessee area. So please come out. We're so excited about the quality of basketball that's going to be played this winter.
Belmont President Dr. Greg Jones, appreciate you for joining us, and have a safe 4th of July weekend.
Thanks. Hope you do as well.
All
Great
right.
to be with you.
All right,
Appreciate
thanks.
the time.
Again, those Belmont president, Dr. Greg Jones. Belmont, their first official day in the Missouri Valley Conference, so we know there'll be some exciting basketball matchups coming up this season. But coming up next, the Deshaun Watson hearings have wrapped up today. What exactly can we expect to come? And more importantly, here in Nashville, what can we expect from the Cleveland Browns next year? We'll get into that coming up next. Before we do that, I'll let y'all know that you can join 1025 and 1063 The Game and Newton Motor Group this summer to help kids in Middle Tennessee as we help team up with Souls for Souls to provide shoes to children experiencing homelessness in Nashville and the surrounding area. With school coming back, our goal is to raise $20,000, which will provide 1,000 pairs of shoes for kids, but we can't do it without you, so please help however you can by going to thegamenashville.com/shoes. All donations will go directly to Souls for Souls to give shoes to children in Middle Tennessee experiencing homelessness. So let's do some good this summer, and thank you for your help. Again, that link is thegamenashville.com/shoes. Newton Motor Group is a proud sponsor of Souls for Music City. Newton Motor Group, the best car deals in Nashville start at Newton.
Robbie and Rex Road here on ESPN.
Welcome into the DDC.
Stillman Company is delivered. There's a new way to hear 102.5 The Game. Nashville's best sports talk on 106.3 FM. From downtown Nashville to Spring Hill on I-65 and to Murfreesboro on I-24. You now have two choices to hear our great sports programming.
Get the extra point, no problem.
And the Nashville Predators. Scores! Check out 106.3 now and save it as a preset.
Hi guys, it's Andrew with Hillside Medical Clinic. Is erectile dysfunction damaging your relationship? Are you sick of the pill and all the side effects? Well, welcome to the future. We have a major medical breakthrough. Hillside Medical Clinic uses the most advanced form of wave therapy. Backed by 60 clinical studies, our technology uses pressure waves to repair and open up blood vessels. We've helped countless men get rid of their ED. But what is the true end result? Their relationship, even their lives, improve drastically. If you're ready to regain your love life, call us right now, and not only will the assessment and ultrasound be free, we'll also give you a gift that produces immediate results in the bedroom. It almost never fails. This is worth $550, and it's free to callers right now. 615-576-5000. That's 615-576-5000. Put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and experience what I call the happiness ripple effect. Call Hillside Medical Clinic now, 615-576-5000.
Looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety in school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF on the ground in Ukraine. We won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/action.
We here at 102.5 and 106.3 The Game are looking for our next great executive producer. Hey, it's Chase McCabe, the program director. If you think that's you and you think that you have the experience, the drive, and of course you share that love of sports, send your resume and cover letter to together@cromwellmedia.com.
Listen to Stillman & Company with me, Caroline Fenton, all season long on ESPN 102.5 The Game for your chance to win Nashville Sounds tickets courtesy of 312 Pizza Company in Germantown.
Attention all foremen with 3 years experience. Harness LLC is your local excavation and site utilities company. We're growing and we need 5 foremen to grow with us. This is Ray Jeter with Harness LLC. Invest in a company who's going to invest in you. Go to selectharness.com to apply today. The 5 foremen we hire will receive 100% paid health coverage, vacation, and up to $6,000 sign-on bonus. Go to selectharness.com and apply today. Harness LLC. Build people, move dirt.
When Smashville wants to rock. We are Nashville's rock station. 102.9 The Buzz.
Darren McFarland.
That's the most personality I think I've heard.
Willie Donick.
Give me credit. I said it.
Chase McCabe.
I still talk to people outside of this building.
The DDC. Weekdays from 10 to 2.
Presented by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling.
On Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Well, with the hearing coming Tuesday via our Adam Schefter, that independent reviewer Sue L. Robinson will hear the Deshaun Watson case. That expedites the timeline on the NFL's potential ruling on Watson's discipline. Now, Robinson will hear the case from Watson, will also hear the case from the NFL, which is likely seeking a lengthy suspension for Watson. Now, the league has pretty much wrapped up its investigation at this point. I'm told it's been added for 18 months. It's interviewed several of the plaintiffs. It's interviewed Watson. Could do some more background work, but pretty much it's ready for a ruling. So the hope from the league and from many people involved is that there is discipline handed out by training camp. Now, this is a new process with Sue L. Robinson. The NFL and the NFLPA jointly appointed her. Roger Goodell will not make the decision on the discipline. So she could take a few weeks to decide, could take a couple days. Either way, this is being close to wrapped up, and the Players Union will have Watson's back here. They are expected to potentially appeal any ruling.
That was Jeremy Fowler on the Deshaun Watson hearing. So today was officially the final day of Deshaun Watson's disciplinary hearing. So again, this is not a trial in a court of law. This is not any sort of legal proceeding. This is simply the hearing set up by the NFL and the NFL Players Association with the disciplinary officer, Sue L. Robinson, to decide if Deshaun Watson is guilty of breaking the NFL code of conduct, if what he did with the 24 women who are alleging him of sexual misconduct, the massage therapists, and his dealings with the Houston Texans of the NDAs and the hotel rooms booked, if that violated the NFLPA code of conduct. And so those wrapped up today. And I think one key part of that Jeremy Fowler touched on there is that it could be days or even weeks until Sue L. Robinson decides her recommendation for a punishment. So again, to recap, Sue Robinson, who is a disciplinary officer appointed by the NFL and the NFL Players Association, she will simply recommend a suspension to the league and to Roger Goodell. Now, Roger Goodell and the league have every right to appeal this suspension. It's my understanding that the only way that the NFL cannot appeal her recommendation is if she recommends no punishment at all. Now, the appeals process is incredibly lengthy, and it's my understanding that both sides do not want an appeals process. So that could mean a couple things. One, Sue Robinson could want to avoid an appeals process altogether, and she just goes ahead and slaps no punishment or recommends no punishment for Deshaun Watson simply to avoid an appeals process. I don't necessarily see that being very likely, considering all of the evidence and just the sheer volume of women who have come forward alleging Deshaun Watson of sexual misconduct. I find that incredibly hard to believe that she would recommend no punishment. Now, the second caveat to that is the NFL leaked, and if you're not watching the stream, I'm using air quotes, leaked that if she recommended 6 to 8 games, the NFL would not appeal it. So that's the NFL's way of saying, look, I understand that the appeals process isn't very fun and it's incredibly lengthy and it takes up everyone's time. So if you want to avoid that, go ahead and recommend 6 to 8 games, and we can avoid that process entirely. But the NFL from the very beginning has come out and said that they want it to be a year suspension and then an indefinite suspension tacked on top of that. So that what exactly that would mean was Deshaun Watson would not be the quarterback of the Browns in the 2022 season, and depending on the recommendation per Sue L. Robinson, the disciplinary officer for the NFL and NFLPA, they would add on top of that. So that's the information that we know. But it could last a couple weeks, and I think that's interesting for a couple reasons. Now, I'm reading this article per NFL.com, and it says that they would like to have a decision by at least July 26th. And you might be saying, well, what's so special about July 26th? That's when the Cleveland Browns report to training camp. That's when the Browns in the NFL want all of this wrapped up. So at least the Browns know and can move forward with who they know will, or who they think will be their starting quarterback in the beginning of the season in week 1. Whether that's an 8-game suspension, then the Browns can move forward in training camp with how they want to proceed and their backup plan for who will be the starting quarterback for those 8 games. If it's going to be a year, if it's going to be 2 years, whatever it might be, the Browns need to know that answer by training camp so they can figure out a game plan, literally a game plan of who was going to be under center for the Cleveland Browns. And, Deshaun Watson's future is completely up in the air and completely depends on these hearings. But I don't think that it just affects Deshaun Watson, because I think that Baker Mayfield is just as affected by these hearings as Deshaun Watson is. Because let's say Deshaun Watson is suspended for a year. Well, the Cleveland Browns probably won't make it a priority of theirs to trade Baker Mayfield if they know that they're going to be out for an entire season of their starting quarterback. And Baker Mayfield has come out and said that he's ready to move on, the Cleveland Browns are ready to move on, that they mutually have decided to part ways. Well, Baker Mayfield is under contract with the Cleveland Browns, so he can pout and cry all he wants about not wanting to be in Cleveland. And let me say, I don't blame Baker Mayfield an ounce for wanting to be out of Cleveland. He's been mistreated by Cleveland since the very, very beginning. He has gone on a carousel of offensive coordinators and head coaches. His talent has been mismanaged by Cleveland, I believe. Because Baker Mayfield was drafted to be the future quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. The Browns come in and show interest in Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson essentially turns the Browns down, and then the Browns turn around and guarantee the most money ever in the history of the NFL to Deshaun Watson to be their quarterback. If I'm Baker Mayfield, I feel incredibly betrayed by that move by the Browns. So I don't blame him for wanting to leave Cleveland. But Cleveland has to want to trade Baker Mayfield. They still have him under contract. Of course, the Browns don't want to spend that much money, don't want to have that much money tied up in the quarterback position. But it's my understanding that if Deshaun Watson does not play this season in 2022, then his contract will be tolled, which means he's only owed $1 million this season, and his contract will be deferred into the 2023 season. So let's say that's what happens. It's a 1-year suspension for Deshaun Watson. Then the Browns only owe Deshaun $1 million, and they pay out the remainder of Baker Mayfield's, I believe it's $18 million contract, whatever that might be. They'll pay out the rest of his contract. And I think that's the best move for everyone involved. But because I think the Browns are better off with Baker as a quarterback. Baker is better off quarterbacking the Browns because let's say it's a decision on July 25th, a day before the Browns report for training camp. Sue L. Robinson, again, this is something that I don't think is very likely to happen, but let's just use it as a scenario. Sue L. Robinson recommends zero punishment for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is the quarterback of the Browns week 1. Well, then the Browns have no use with Baker Mayfield, and Baker wants out of Cleveland. So it would seem inevitable that a trade would be made. Let's say the Carolina Panthers, a team and looking for a quarterback. I understand that they have Sam Darnold. I understand that they have Matt Corral. But I don't think either of those options necessarily thrill you. And you also look at the Seattle Seahawks, I think, who are salivating at the opportunity to have Baker on the roster and have Baker under center because their alternate options are Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Also, neither of which get you too jazzed. I think that's the only scenario in which Baker Mayfield will be traded. I understand that neither side necessarily wants to be in this negotiation or in this limbo process waiting for Deshaun Watson's hearing to be finalized. But I think that Baker is in just as a difficult spot as Deshaun Watson. Of course, not by his own doing, like Deshaun Watson's is, but Baker's future is just as much in limbo as Deshaun Watson's. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how the Browns proceed with Baker Mayfield because they are not in a better position by trading Baker Mayfield. And I don't think Baker Mayfield is in a better position on another team if the Browns do decide to trade him.
Well, I think we played audio of Baker Mayfield a couple of days ago where he talked about he thinks that it's best for both sides to move on. And one part of that clip is that I think he was asked about whether there could be some sort of reconciliation. And he basically said it's up to the Browns. Like, they have to basically pull a Lloyd Dobler and say anything and hold a boombox over their head to try to convince Baker Mayfield to fall back in love with them.
Take us back.
Yes, that Baker Mayfield, I don't know Baker Mayfield, but from watching Baker Mayfield from afar, I think we said he had a healthy ego the other day.
Healthy ego.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine even the Browns groveling would have him change his mind, especially since he knows that it's a marriage of convenience. I agree that Baker Mayfield would be a better option than Jacoby Brissett for the Browns, but I just don't know how they patch things up. Yes, I know that he is contractually obligated, but I just think that I feel like the situation is too far gone for the Browns and Baker Mayfield to work together amicably. I think that ship has long since sailed.
But I think that's just the worst possible situation for either of them, because Baker Mayfield's other option is trying to learn an NFL offense in a matter of a month. And we talked to Teron Davenport in the TD Power Hour, and he said, he's a good enough, or it was either Chris Sanders or TD, I don't remember. But essentially, whichever one it said, essentially said, he can do it. It'll take a couple of weeks, but he is a smart quarterback, and he's been in the league long enough that he'll be able to adapt. I hear that. I understand that. However, I don't know if I completely buy that. And without Baker, the Browns are stuck with Jacoby Brissett, who's a career backup, or Josh Dobbs, who doesn't have a single NFL start under his belt. So I look at the Browns in a really, really difficult catch-22, and all of it depends on this hearing. And other than that, balls are in the air until that hearing is dropped. And I have a very hard time thinking that it'll be anything less than half a season. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. What does Chad Withrow think about all of this, and how could this potentially affect the Titans? He will join us coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman at Stillman & Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
The MTSU Blue Raiders live here.
Down, Middle Tennessee! 3-ball, yes, sir!
And when you're in the borough, tune us in on 97.5.
In the end zone, caught, touchdown!
We are Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 The Game.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
This segment of ESPN 102.5 The Game is brought to you by Train Heating and Cooling Systems. Tested, retested, engineered, and re-engineered to keep up with you. We run together. Visit traininfo.com to find your local independent train dealer. Traininfo.com. It's hard to stop a train.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway. Now here's Jim Mitchell.
At Mitchell's Mr. Transmission, we also offer free towing with any major repairs. If your vehicle has a breakdown and you should need any type towing, towing is available through Dad's Towing Service. Dad's is a professional towing company in Nashville that provides all types towing and recovery, 24 hours a day.
You know it's going to happen, and when your car needs service or repair, remember Mitchell's Mr. Transmission on Gallatin Road, just north of Briley Parkway.
The clock is ticking on Genesis Diamond's amazing finance offer. You have until 5 p.m. Saturday to take advantage of the hottest offer of the summer. 5 years, zero interest financing on practically everything in our showcases. Get in now and splurge. Maybe treat yourself. How about a stunning $12,000 designer ring, complete with a GIA diamond for just $200 a month? It's the smartest, easiest, and best way to buy. Nothing down and no interest for 5 years. But hurry, this incredible offer ends Saturday and will not be extended. Only at Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills and Cool Springs. On approved credit.
Erectile dysfunction ruins sex, but it's more than that. It harms otherwise good relationships. It destroys marriages. It can cause depression and anxiety, and it can be extremely hard on a man's self-esteem. This is Kim for the Tennessee Men's Clinic, and if you're suffering with ED, if it's affecting you, I want you to know that if you're like most men, we can treat it and get you back to the man you used to be. At the Tennessee Men's Clinic, we're ED experts. Our protocols have success rates as high as 90%. We've successfully treated thousands of men in the Music City, and we have a variety of treatment options and treatment combinations that could have you performing like you haven't in years. You could even last up to an hour and experience great sex again that is satisfying for both you and your partner. In treating your health, expertise matters, so make an appointment today. Your initial appointment is only $99 and includes blood work and a medical consult. Call 615-208-9090 or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Visit our website to learn more, including side effects. Treatments extra. Results vary.
O'Reilly. This is Claudia's O'Reilly Auto Parts story.
I had just moved to a new city and barely even knew where the grocery store was yet. When my car wouldn't start one morning, I didn't know who to ask about local shops. But I remembered a name from back home, O'Reilly Auto Parts. I called and they pointed me to a great mechanic just down the street. Now, I feel a little more at home.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne. Nashville's exclusive home for the Nashville Predators. ESPN 102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball. The leading receiver. Awesome game 7.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell media station.
Where you have a voice.
We're one play away from an injury.
He knows this. He's a study of the game.
And we have strong opinions.
He's been awful. I don't think they were trying, and that's why I feel the way I feel.
This is Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman and Caroline Fenton. Presented by TriStar Moving on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, TriStar Movers with 5-star service. We're live from the Hillside Medical Game Studios, and we're streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Chad Withrow joins us now, Outkick 360. Chad, we were just chatting about the Deshaun Watson hearing that just wrapped up and how this has a snowball effect with not just the Browns, but with Baker Mayfield as well. And then you're also bringing in the Carolina Panthers or the Seattle Seahawks or teams that could potentially be interested in Baker Mayfield. And this whole thing is just a big old mess. So my question to you is, who is quarterbacking the Browns next season?
Well, that's a great question. It's not going to be Baker Mayfield. I probably going to have a one-year suspension. Probably Jacoby Brissett right now is going to be quarterback in the Browns. Here's something we talked about a little bit on our show today that got me thinking about some red flags with Deshaun Watson that's completely separate of the red flags of the 24 women who are accusing him of wrongdoing. The red flags on Deshaun Watson, the competitor. Okay, he had to be convinced to go to Cleveland with a guaranteed contract. Cleveland had to give him guaranteed money, even if he suspended this year, to get full salary in order to play in Cleveland. Cleveland was the best team from a roster standpoint on his list of suitors because it was Atlanta, Miami, Carolina. Other teams are on there, are not good right now compared to Cleveland, whose roster is good. If this guy ultimately all he wants to do is win and win a Super Bowl, the fact that he wasn't going to go to Cleveland because of what? It's cold, it's windy, that he had to be convinced to come back to the negotiating table and tell his agents that he would go there only with a guaranteed contract, that's a red flag to me. On the flip side of that, say what you want about Baker Mayfield, and clearly, he rubbed some people the wrong way, and they didn't like him. Not all of his teammates liked him in Cleveland. Here's a guy who fought through an injury and went out there and played, and it was to his own detriment. He probably shouldn't have played. It probably hurt his ability to go get a contract or even come back with Cleveland because he tried to push through injury to help his team. Deshaun Watson sits out a year ago. He did before all the allegations because he didn't like the direction of the Texans. Continued to do so even though he was eligible to play. We had David Coley in studio on Monday. He said, he tried to talk him into playing, and that conversation didn't last too long. And he had to be convinced to go to the best team on his list only because they came back and gave him everything he wanted. He had crossed them off, even though they were the team most capable of getting to a Super Bowl. Those are some red flags for Deshaun Watson, the player, on top of the other obvious red flags.
But it's not like I look at Cleveland as being some Super Bowl contender. I mean, they play in a difficult division, at least this season, with Baltimore and Cincinnati. And this is such a difficult AFC, and I do not think that if there's a Super Bowl table, I don't think that Cleveland has a seat at it. And yeah, to your point, Carolina and in Atlanta, those aren't teams that are necessarily equipped to win the Super Bowl right now either. But I don't look at Cleveland as being some dark horse in the AFC.
Well, they were, a bad quarter away from going to the AFC Championship game with Baker Mayfield just 2 years ago, right? We're a year removed from that happening. And people can say what they want about Baker Mayfield, but now put Deshaun Watson from a talent standpoint on that roster, and that roster is good. I mean, you're right. It is a tough division with Cincinnati and Baltimore. And I'm not saying that I'm putting them at the top of the list of, here are the 4 or 5 Super Bowl contenders this year. But my point is that's a playoff team. That is a playoff roster. I really feel that way about Cleveland. I look around and see, the rest of that team or the rest of the teams on his list. Those teams are not close to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're very close to the playoffs when you look up and down those teams. So, again, I think Deshaun Watson is a terrific player. When he's healthy and he's playing and he's into it, he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. But that's just something that jumped out to me about Deshaun Watson, the competitor, that would give me a little bit of pause if I'm a Browns fan.
I think that's a fair point, and honestly something that I haven't looked into. But Chad Withrow is with us, Outkick 360, and this is a discussion that Jared and I have had. But I wonder, let's say it is a year suspension, which I think is probably the most likely scenario for Deshaun Watson. A year suspension, he's back in 2023. That'll be 2 years since Deshaun Watson had a full season starting in the NFL. Can he still be good after 2 years of not competing in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he can. I think Michael Vick proves that. You know, he was gone, I want to say 2 or 3 years when he went to prison.
Yeah, and to that point, that's prison versus not being in prison. So
yeah,
it's a different scenario there.
They let you exercise in prison, Caroline, but I don't think you're getting quite the reps.
I don't think you have quarterback gurus in prison. Maybe you do.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some athletic guys, but I don't know how many guys are out there throwing and running routes with you.
Yeah, I've never been, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I've seen a lot of movies and television shows about prison.
Yeah, I've seen The Longest Yard.
That's our knowledge right now. So we're experts on prison, is what we're trying to tell everyone. So look, yeah, you're not getting the football-specific work that you need in prison, but you can stay in shape. With Deshaun Watson, I mean, he can do whatever he wants, you know, in terms of workouts and everything else. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue. There's going to be some rust to knock off for sure. But I don't think it derails his career or anything. I think he can come back and be a top 10 quarterback in the league right away and work his way back into being a top 5 quarterback pretty quickly, even if he's out 2 years.
Chad Withrow is with us, Outkick 360. Chad, you say your prediction for the starting quarterback in 2022 for the Browns is Jacoby Brissett. And I think a lot of Titans fans might look at that and almost feel a little bit of relief. But I look at that as potentially being a bad thing for the Titans because I look at the Browns' schedule this year. They play the Patriots, they play the Chargers, they play the Browns, they play the Bills, they play the Bengals, they play the Ravens. They play really difficult teams on their schedule, teams that are slated to be at the top of the AFC. So if Jacoby Brissett is quarterbacking the Browns, then those teams could look at the Browns game as an automatic win, whereas with Deshaun or with Baker, it'd be a little bit more competitive. So I would say this is almost a bad thing for the Titans, that the Browns could potentially have Jacoby Brissett quarterbacking that team and be a less competitive team against these much more stacked rosters in the AFC.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, you go into it and you immediately think, okay, well, that's one more AFC team that's not going to be a factor in the playoff race, so that's good for the Titans. But then, yes, you know, you see the common opponents and everything else, and you get to the season, and, you know, it's always amazing who you're rooting for to help your team as the year goes on. And a lot of times it flips, right? You know, there's one game you think, man, we're really this team to do well or this team to upset this one. Then you get to the season, and that team suddenly in contention for a playoff spot you're looking for, and you're rooting for the opposite team going into that game. So, I mean, look, that's really playing chess when you look at it, you know, that far out with who you want quarterbacking the Browns for the Titans, for the good of the Titans. Here's a more interesting thing for me on the Titans-Browns connection. And I thought about this originally, but then I stopped thinking about it when the Titans drafted Malik Willis in the 3rd round. We had Jordan Schultz on yesterday, who's an NFL reporter and does a great job with his podcast also. He broke the Rob Gronkowski retirement story. But we asked him about Baker Mayfield, like you asked me, Caroline, to start, and he said, why not the Titans for Baker Mayfield? And he kind of laughed, and he said, I know they just drafted a quarterback, but seriously, if they did not draft Malik Willis, if he wasn't there in the 3rd round, he said, I fully expect, knowing John Robinson, he would be making a move for Baker Mayfield right now to back up Ryan Tannehill as the backup option in Nashville. And that really got my brain running when I heard that. And I'm thinking, you know, it's not crazy because it's kind of what they did with Ryan Tannehill and Marcus Mariota, right? They brought in a guy with starting experience that didn't work at the very end of his tenure with his previous spot, and he came in, and he was a great backup. I mean, Baker Mayfield's a great backup for someone. I think we'd all agree. But it's a great insurance plan, too, if it doesn't work out with Ryan Tannehill. So made me think, look, it's not going to happen now with Malik Willis on the roster, but wouldn't that be something?
Chad Withrow is with us, brought to you by Apple Collision Centers, online at applecollisioncenters.com. To your point, Chad, and it's a really interesting point to bring up, but why does Malik Willis throw a hitch in all of this? Because, I mean, I would say that right now, my prediction is for the Titans to carry 3 quarterbacks on game day. Let's say, you ditch Logan Woodside, you bring in Baker Mayfield. I don't think anyone expects Malik Willis to start or even play this season. So what about Malik Willis would inhibit the Titans from going out and getting Baker Mayfield as their backup?
Well, you're speaking my love language right now, saying what you did about Logan Woodside, because I just don't get it. I hope Logan Woodside's not listening right now, but I get so tired of, well, they just love him. He really knows the system. He's a great locker room guy. If Logan Woodside had to start for the Tennessee Titans, there is a 0.0% chance they could win in the NFL. If you have a good backup in the NFL, here's the way I rate a good backup. If you are on a good football team that is a playoff team, I'm not talking about a 14-2 type team. I'm talking about, or I guess now there's 17 games, so 14-3. I'm talking about 11-6 type team, 12-5 that's going to get to the playoffs. Your backup quarterback, if he had to start 4 consecutive games, can get you to 500 over those games. That is a really good backup quarterback situation in the NFL. Who believes that Logan Woodside would win a single game over 4 if he had to start for the Tennessee Titans? And I think even the most diehard, staunch Titans fan would tell you they don't believe he could win a game in the NFL. And I don't get it. I mean, I think it's great that the guy knows the system. Okay, how many people could you find that can learn the system and be a good locker room guy as a backup quarterback, but also could not win you a game if you had to? That's Logan Woodside to me. So, look, you're probably asking the wrong person because I'm way too into that plan. I would love to have Baker Mayfield in Nashville as a backup quarterback. I'd love it if there was a situation where Malik Willis could learn from both Ryan Tannehill and Baker Mayfield, and you had those 2 options at the top. I just don't see that happening.
We have a term on this show. We say anti-Tannites for me and Jared in the anti-Tannehill club, but I think that you reside more so in the anti-Loganite group.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
I think that's fair. I'm awfully worked up over the backup over here, Chad.
It's probably too much of a mouthful, but I am anti any backup quarterback that I hear from people who cover the team or, GMs and coaches that, he's a great locker room guy. We really like him. He really knows the system. Well, great. The assistant quality control quarterback coach at these places, they know the system well, too. Doesn't mean they should be the backup quarterback. And I hear that way too much about Logan Woodside.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Chad Withrow is with us, Outkick 360. An absolute bombshell dropped on college football yesterday. USC and UCLA will enter the Big Ten next year. What does that mean for the future of college football, for the future of the SEC, for the future of the college football playoff? Everything is up in the air. We'll get into that with Chad Withrow coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Join 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and Newton Motor Group this summer to help kids in Middle Tennessee. We're teaming up with Souls for Souls to provide shoes to children experiencing homelessness in Nashville and the surrounding area for back to school. Our goal is to raise $20,000, which will provide 1,000 pairs of shoes for kids. To help, go to thegamenashville.com/shoes. Let's do some good this summer. Newton Motor Group is a proud sponsor of Souls for Music City. Newton Motor Group, the best car deals in Nashville. Start at Newton. Visit thegamenashville.com/shoes.
Winning this award is truly like winning the Super Bowl of car dealer awards for Mercedes-Benz.
Edwin Vickery, General Manager of Mercedes-Benz of Music City.
Culture eats strategy for lunch. You have to hit on all cylinders to win this award. You can strategize all you want. You got to still have the right tools, and our tools are our people.
Live the dream with 3-time Mercedes-Benz Best of the Best award winner, Mercedes-Benz of Music City. Go to mbofmc.com.
Save big this 4th of July at Electronic Express. Get an LG 55-inch 4K TV for $399 or a Samsung black stainless washer dryer for $549 each. Electronic Express has huge savings in every department: computers, appliances, 4K TVs, smart home, furniture, mattresses, and more. Don't miss out on an Xbox S bundle for just $389 or an Acer laptop for $229. Shop in-store or online with up to 36 months free financing. Electronic Express. We make celebrations happen.
This is Stan Harrison, CEO of Apple Collision Centers. We understand that no one likes to deal with auto body repair and the inconvenience it becomes in your day-to-day life. I want to personally invite you to stop by and let our experienced staff see how we can help you make your vehicle look good as new. Apple Collision Center has 3 convenient locations: Old Hickory, Hendersonville, and Gallatin, ready to serve you. Come by and see us or visit us online at applecollisioncenters.com.
Signs First is the official sign company for 1025 The Game. Go to sfnash.com.
It's watching the top players take the ice. It's hard-fought games that end in victory. It's showing your favorite team to your favorite people. Secure your seats for the 2022-23 Nashville Predators season today to ensure you never miss a game at Bridgestone Arena. Plus, enjoy Nashville locker room discounts, exclusive presale offers, and more. Visit NashvillePredators.com/season tickets. Join the Loyal Legion today and paint the town Preds. That's NashvillePredators.com/season tickets. NashvillePredators.com/season tickets.
Summer is in full swing, and the deals are heating up at Lowe's. Shop our 4th of July savings and find everything you need to celebrate the holiday and the entire season. Like our special buy Master Forge Charcoal Grill for just $128, valued at $169. Plus, kick back and relax with up to 40% off select patio and seasonal decor. Lowe's, home to any budget, home to any possibility. Valid 6/30 through 7/6 while supplies last.
It's on. It's happening. Remember, you can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter.
Get out of the way, I'm watching the game.
Presented by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company, 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Chad Witherow is with us. Chad Witherow brought to you by Apple Collision Centers, online at applecollisioncenters.com. Chad, first of all, someone tell Paul Kaharski to log out of Twitter. Someone tell Paul to put his phone away. But second of all, a huge bombshell dropped on college football. USC and UCLA were unanimously voted into the Big Ten. And I have a million questions, a million concerns, just a million thoughts rolling through my head. But what do you think this means for the future of college football?
And Paul stepped in it this week on your station. That was fun to follow. That's one of those where I just grab popcorn and sit back and don't comment on anything and just watch the fallout from it.
That's probably the best approach. That's usually what I do with PK's Twitter.
I don't even know if Adam can hear me right now, but Adam, congratulations on being the beacon of journalism amongst the Predators community. But in all seriousness, you really did do a great job. But that was fun to follow. Anyway, so on to college football. Here's where it's going. I think it's going to 2 24-team super conferences. I don't think we're done. I think we're going to get more news pretty quickly on some of this. I think you would be foolish if you are a team in the ACC or Big 12 or Pac-12 that's not angling to get to the Big Ten or the SEC. I think the SEC, I tweeted this out, that what's the counter from the SEC to the Big Ten? And people were responding and saying, well, they don't need a counter because now they're just even, right? The SEC took Texas and Oklahoma, and now the Big Ten countered with USC and UCLA, so it can be done. And I'm thinking, this thing isn't done. The SEC is not going to stop until they are far superior to the Big Ten. So there's going to be a counter move by the SEC. This is just going to continue until we're looking at probably a two-conference of 24 teams, 48-team college football super conference that's going to look an awful lot like the AFC versus the NFC in a Super Bowl at the end of the year, where the Big Ten champion will play the SEC champion, and that will decide the college football national champion. I think that's where all of this ends. How quickly do we get there? I don't know. My guess is probably in the next 5 to 10 years. That's what we're going to see.
Yeah, that's actually the exact comparison that I've been using is college football will turn into the NFL, not just in terms of being more of a commercial product, but because it'll be the AFC and the NFC, and you'll have an NFL-styled playoff coming down the pipe. But you mentioned the timeline, and I think that's so spot on because it's going to happen sooner rather than later. I mean, realignment, conference realignment is not something that's new to college football. I mean, it happens all the time. But the rate at which it's happening right now is rapid. And it's not just Louisville going to the ACC, and it's not just small moves here and there. I mean, you're talking about the biggest programs and the biggest moneymakers in college football joining already massive conferences. And I think that it is going to happen, like to your point, sooner rather than later. But to your point about the massive super conferences, we've been talking about this today, and I think it's an intriguing topic of where does that leave some of the smaller teams, or more so to that point, less competitive teams in Vanderbilt, and on the Big Ten side of things, Northwestern and Indiana. Those aren't competitive football teams. So where do these teams lie in the super conferences?
I mean, I think they lie in the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't think there's any chance that those schools get voted off the island because they've been on it for so long. Here's the luckiest two programs in America are Rutgers and Maryland, who joined the Big Ten in 2014. Think about Rutgers, who's contributed nothing to college football in the last 50 years.
Can make the same argument about Missouri.
Yeah, well, who do they contribute? The McCourty twins and Logan Ryan, right? Missouri's another great one, right? That they found A&M was going to be okay, but Missouri got into that safe boat, and they are just sailing on the ocean of success and prosperity because they jumped in with the SEC. Same for Rutgers and Maryland. Now, look, Vandy, they offer nothing from a football perspective to the SEC. Nothing. Not only that, they have a tendency to take large checks and do nothing with it, and not invest it back into athletics, and certainly not into football, which has been a big contention of mine. But they're a charter member of the SEC. I mean, they're not going anywhere. I don't think any of those other programs are going anywhere either. They're just really fortunate that they're going to get a chance to stick around. Now, the really fascinating one is what happens to Duke, what happens to Wake Forest, what happens to some of these programs that don't offer a lot from a football perspective in the ACC or the Pac-12 or the Big 12 right now, when this game of musical chairs is done and the music stops. I fear for those programs, they're not going to have a seat when the music stops.
And to your point about Greg Schiano, he's probably looking at Tennessee fans, not thinking that he'd get the last laugh, but look at him. He's the one of the founding members of the Super Conference in the Big Ten. But to your point about Duke and Wake Forest and some of these less competitive teams in the ACC or the Pac-12, or even I look at the Big 12 as well, and their new realignment, bringing in BYU or UCF seems so much less significant now because, to your point, those teams will not have a permanent home in this incredibly competitive super conference that seems inevitable to come. So I almost look at this like it's going to be an expansion of two super conferences, and it's almost going to be a different division of college football. It seems to me that they're going to have to compete for a different national championship because these two columns or these two pillars of college football will be so drastically different.
Yeah, first off, stop it on Greg Schiano. There is nothing better about being the Rutgers head football coach that's better than being the Tennessee head football coach. And last I checked, Tennessee is still in the SEC and not at risk of being kicked out of the SEC. So I would still rather be in the SEC than the Big Ten, even after this movement. But you're spot on what's going to happen to the leftovers, essentially. Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, Wake Forest, Duke, Syracuse possibly. Go down the list of ACC, Big 12, Pac-12 schools that don't get in that. What I see it as a 48-team mega conference that consists of 24 Big 10 schools, 24 SEC schools. Those that don't find their way into those two conferences, I mean, they're going to keep playing football, but is it some sort of like what you see with the Group of Five now, where we know the college football playoff is going to expand? So let's go with the college football playoff going to 16 teams, let's say, just for the purposes of this mental exercise. Well, if that happens, I'm willing to bet 14 of them will be Big Ten or SEC in this new college football reality. So there are two outside spots for the other conferences that are left playing and those other schools. I think that's probably realistic, that they kind of go to a level of football that you see now with most Group of 5 teams, where they're playing competitive football. They're going to play some of the big boys on their schedule. But for the most part, MTSU's not playing the same sport as Alabama, right? It's not the same game. Even though they're both FCS teams, it's two different levels. I think that those teams we just mentioned, the leftovers of those conferences, the big conferences now, the Power 5, they go into that next level down mode.
Chad Withrow is with us, Outkick 360. And to your point about the two mega conferences, is that going to be the only scenario in which Notre Dame joins a conference? Where does all of this leave Notre Dame?
Notre Dame is in a really good spot because they are the belle of the ball right now. I mean, the Big Ten and the SEC would love to have Notre Dame. They offer a ton of financial value to the ACC now with their partnership and just scheduling the 4 or 5 games or how many they play against the ACC. With that partnership brings a lot of television dollars and a lot of money to the ACC. They also make a lot of money as an independent right now, and they're not inclined to join a conference. They are eventually going to have to join a conference. They should join the Big Ten. I mean, that makes the most sense to me, and I think eventually they will join the Big Ten. But, man, oh, man, whoever gets Notre Dame, that is a huge coup. That is the most valuable brand and football program that's left out there right now. That's not in the Big Ten or the SEC. I mean, we go down the list: Oregon, Washington, are being rumored. Clemson, Florida State, Miami. I take Notre Dame over all of those. So they're in a really good spot.
Chad Withrow is with us, Outkick 360, and you mentioned Clemson, Florida State, because I think that Dabo is knocking on the door of the president of Clemson. I think that Florida State and Oregon, they're all doing the same thing, that they are all scrambling, trying to find their permanent home and their next move. So in your opinion, Chad, what do you think is the next domino to fall? Because there are a lot of intriguing moves that would make sense, either the Big Ten or the SEC for teams in the ACC and the Pac-12.
Yeah, I think the next move is going to be done by the SEC unless we buy these rumors, some reports out there about Oregon and Washington. I don't know if you saw it, but John Canzano, who's a big-time reporter in Oregon, is saying that, lawmakers in those two states are trying to keep Oregon State, Washington State bound together. The way it's worded, that's not, well, they have to stay in the Pac-12. That's they need to be together. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, hey, Big Ten, take all of us along with you if you're going to do it. And to me, that's a move to shield Washington State and Oregon State from getting left behind. I think if that's not the next move, I think it is a Clemson, Florida State. Here's what makes the most sense to me, just right off the bat. Geographically, culturally, everything. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and either North Carolina or Virginia Tech joins the SEC. I think culturally, Virginia Tech fits better from a football standpoint. I think brand-wise, North Carolina has a lot more to offer. If you buy this academic superiority of the Big Ten argument, then North Carolina and Virginia will eventually join the Big Ten and not the SEC. I don't buy that. I think
that's a dumb argument.
Are on the mind of anyone, right? It's all about money right now, so I'm not buying that argument. If I had my pick, I would go SEC next move, and I think Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, that's the play for the SEC.
And to your point about geography, I agree with you that Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, those moves make so much more sense to the SEC geographically, culturally. But if this move from USC and UCLA to the Big Ten has told us anything, it's that nothing is off the table, that geography doesn't matter anymore, that culture doesn't matter anymore, because I don't even know how many players at USC and UCLA have even seen snow, much less played in it. So I can only imagine what that plane ride from USC to Lincoln, Nebraska is going to be like for these players. So I don't think that there's any sort of geographical or cultural aspect of this that's going to hold anything back. I think, to your point, it's all about money.
I totally agree. And look, we are only bound by the limits of our imagination right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are no geographic limits to what college sports could be and what these conferences are going to do. And you're right. I mean, you look at that map and you look how far away Los Angeles is from some of these places in the Big Ten. They proved that. But I'll be honest,
It's almost
Caroline,
comical.
outside of Notre Dame, if I'm the SEC, there's not a lot of brands left that I really cover. That's outside of Clemson, Florida. That's not already in your geographic footprint.
Florida State, Miami, I would argue, are the only ones left.
And again, that's all in your footprint. I can even go to Texas and say I think Baylor at TCU are desirable. Well, that's in your footprint. I mean, there's an argument to be made for West Virginia from a cultural standpoint. I'd love to talk when Jerry gets back about Louisville, why Louisville's not discussed more with a move up. I think that makes sense for the SEC or the Big Ten, and they're kind of right there in that mid-range. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you're this, what do you want to add? Colorado, Utah? I mean, these aren't brands that I'm dying to get a hold of if I'm the SEC. So it just falls in line where everything really outside of Notre Dame makes sense geographically and from a brand perspective of who the SEC would want and who they should go get next.
Chad, we appreciate you. We'll chat with you next week and have a good 4th of July weekend.
Always fun. Thanks, Caroline.
Appreciate it. You too. Chad Withrow, Outkick 360, joining us. Coming up next, I want to get to your thoughts on this college football playoff expansion, conference realignment, as well as some of your Preds thoughts as well. We'll get into your text. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan, in for Jared Stillman at Stillman & Company on 102.5 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
They're still in good shape to make the playoffs.
and I-840,
Players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
there's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams. This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
Race fans, it's the biggest event of the summer, July 9th at Nashville's legendary Fairgrounds Speedway with the SRX Racing Series and Rackney Roofing Masters of the Pros 150. This event will sell out quickly, so get your tickets now at NashvilleFairgroundsSpeedway.racing. The biggest names from NASCAR and Indy Racing like Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Michael Waltrip, Helio Castroneves, Joseph Newgarden, and more. Don't miss this huge event. Secure your tickets today at NashvilleFairgroundsSpeedway.racing.
The clock is ticking on Genesis Diamond's amazing finance offer. You have until 5 p.m. Saturday to take advantage of the hottest offer of the summer. 5 years, 0 interest financing on practically everything in our showcases. Get in now and splurge. Maybe treat yourself. How about a stunning $12,000 designer ring, complete with a GIA diamond for just $200 a month? It's the smartest, easiest, and best way to buy. Nothing down and no interest for 5 years. But hurry, this incredible offer ends Saturday and will not be extended. Only at Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills and Cool Springs. On approved credit.
Golfers, swing into Edwin Watts Golf Shops for the 4th of July sale. This holiday weekend, receive a 50% bonus trade-in towards Callaway, Rogue, ST Woods and Irons, and Apex 21 irons. Buy any Cobra golf bag and receive a free Puma Pop Top mini speaker valued at $40. All Ben Hogan shorts are now $34.99. And from Bushnell, Tour V5 and Tour V5 shipped rangefinders are $50 off. Shop this weekend at Edwin Watts Golf Shops for these deals and more. Edwin Watts Golf Shops, home of the 90-day satisfaction guarantee.
As in all human conflict, adults fight and children suffer. Today, 7.5 million children in Ukraine need to find water and shelter. They need safety in school. They need a place to sleep and comfort in the dark. Show them the world cares. Support UNICEF on the ground in Ukraine. We won't stop until every child is safe. UNICEFUSA.org/action.
Nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate. I'm a speed bump. Did you hear what I said? I'm a speed bump. And if you have cut-rate car insurance, the cost to reattach your muffler could really be a bump in the road. So switch to Allstate, save money, and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Based on coverage and limits selected. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. In most states, prices vary based on how you buy. Allstate Bar and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Saturday.
Donovan breaks his back, little flare, that'll get down. 2 runs will score. Rushed, and that's off the pole. for a home run. Rhys Hoskins jumped on that 1-0 ball game.
It's a National League matchup as the Phillies host the Cardinals. Coverage begins at 2:30 on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Hey, it's ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck on Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Tune in for Nashville Sounds Baseball tonight at 7:05 p.m. on 94.9 The Fan as the Sounds face the Indianapolis Indians, the AAA affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates, at First Horizon Park. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by 312 Pizza and Farm Bureau Health Plans. Adam, unless you have a thought?
To the phone.
To the phones! Adam in Portland is up next.
Miss Caroline, I've left y'all alone for the way. It's been so good. Y'all been good together.
Oh, thank you, Adam. I actually just told Ian at the break. I said I'm really looking forward to Adam's report card of the day, and I'm so happy that you've enjoyed it.
No, I would tell you if it was trash. I think y'all sound so good together.
I know you would tell us if it was trash.
100%. No, hey, so my only thought, because I don't care. If it's not the SEC, I don't really care about it. But I will say it's kind of, the UCLA games and USC games, when they'll get that primetime game, it's like 10 p.m. start time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still going to be a thing? Like, does Michigan State have to fly out there and play a game at 10 p.m. at night? Because that would be a huge advantage, right? If they go into the Big Ten and they have to play all these games super late because they're West Coast.
Yeah, thank you for your call, Adam. I think it depends on a couple of things. I think it depends on the network. So if you look at, let's say, ABC is carrying, hypothetically, a UCLA-Nebraska game. Well, that game is on at the same time no matter where you are in the world. So on the East Coast, that game's at 7. In Central Time, that game's at 6. So it completely depends on where you are. So, in California, in LA, that game would be at 9 o'clock if my time zone math is correct.
What time does it start Eastern Time?
7.
4.
Excuse me, 4. It would be at 4. So, yeah, so that would be how that turns out. It depends on the network. Now, the Pac-12 After Dark, I don't know how that's going to be handled. I really don't know. I think that's a fair question. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage? I think we've all been there where we've traveled across time zones and you have a little bit of jet lag and, you get tired a little bit earlier, you fall asleep a little bit later. I'm sure that's something that teams in the Big Ten will deal with, but I think that's a fair question to ask. We'll go back to your phones. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott texts in and says the next two dominoes to fall will be Clemson and Florida State to the SEC. I don't think that that's too far-fetched to think about, but where does that leave Miami? Because I don't think that Miami is going to be left behind. If the Clemson and Florida State make a move, I don't think Miami is going to let themselves be left behind. I go back to the statement that the Pac-12 released yesterday. And they said that they were surprised and saddened by this move. And I think that's totally a disservice that the Pac-12 did to itself by saying that they were surprised. Because if the Pac-12 wasn't on top of this, then that's on their own wrongdoing. And I don't feel bad for them if they lose business for it because that was their own oversight of, the boxes they need to check as a business. I think Miami's doing the same thing. Miami is a strong enough football program to understand that they're in a very vulnerable position. I think Miami's probably reaching out to the Florida States and the Clemsons of the ACC and saying, okay, where do we go next? So I think Clemson and Florida State are very probable moves to the SEC. I just wonder where that leaves Miami as well.
Miami is not as much of a brand as it used to be. I mean,
it's not the same as the U days.
No, it's not. But it's still a very popular school. So, Miami moving to the SEC, I don't think would have the same. It wouldn't pack the same punch, as it would have 10, 15 years ago, or something like that. But, Clemson is an SEC school masquerading in the ACC. Or is an ACC school masquerading? I don't know. Either way.
ACC school masquerading as the SEC. It's an SEC school with an easier schedule.
Yes. I mean, Clemson is perfect for the SEC in terms of the level, the level of competition, the culture, the geographic location. It makes a lot of sense. Clemson would fit, perfectly within the confines of the SEC, as would Florida State and I guess Miami, but yeah, I wonder if Miami and Florida State are package deals at this point. I don't see Miami in the Big Ten being a fit. but that's just me.
But also, I didn't see UCLA being a fit in the Big
Yeah,
Ten.
that's true.
So, yeah,
That started the whole
tradition is
thing.
out the window. Will
Yeah.
from Nashville texts in and says there's zero chance that Vanderbilt leaves the SEC. They're a baseball team has given the SEC another 2 national championships in a major sport over the last 6 years. I hear you. And Vanderbilt's baseball program is elite. Yes, I understand that. These are not moves that are driven by college baseball. These are moves where college baseball and basketball and track and swimming and all of the other sports just have to follow. Because baseball doesn't make a lot of money. There are very few college baseball programs that are actually revenue-generating programs. I believe Vanderbilt is one of them. But even if they do create revenue, it's a very, very low number. I believe that Vanderbilt baseball is at the top of college baseball, but their revenue is around $4 to $5 million. No, that's not nothing, but compared to college football, I mean, that could be what you pay a cupcake to come play you for homecoming. So I hear you, but this is not a move that's motivated by college baseball whatsoever.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I am very interested in seeing how this affects college basketball. I mean, we've been focusing mostly on college football, obviously, but I'd be very curious to see how the idea of a super conference affects college basketball, affects automatic bids, conference championships, and how it affects the NCAA tournament. So that's not at the forefront of the conversation, but I certainly am very interested to see how this affects that.
No, it's a fair thought because conference champions. The fact that David Poyle has traded high picks for such relatively unimpressive talent improved the odds of a big draft or RFA signing. Give up 2 Ryan Hartmans, a Jeremy Lozon, and a 3rd to sign Matthew Tkachuk makes it feel like a pretty low price.
Well, to the texter's point, offer sheets unfortunately aren't used enough, unless you're the Montreal Canadiens or Carolina Hurricanes, because they've kind of gone back and forth with that over the past couple of years. But, I guess what the listener is asking is if the Predators haven't had luck trading high draft picks for win in terms of, win now moves, whether it was Ryan Hartman a few years ago, I wouldn't call Jeremy Lozon a win now move, but would it make more sense to use that draft capital to tender an offer sheet, to someone like Matthew Tkachuk or Patrick Laine or Marty Necas or someone like that? Sure. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. David Poyle has been on the receiving end of 2 very high-profile offer sheets in his career. Shea Weber, of course, but also Scott Stevens when he was with the Washington Capitals. I think David Poyle has only actually executed 1 offer sheet, and that was, I think it was Dave Manson, like 30 years ago when he was with, I think he was a defenseman for the Oilers when David was with the Capitals. But David, as member of as an employee of the Predators, has never executed an offer sheet, and I would be surprised if it happened.
615-737-1025 is our phone number if you have a thought on that. But we are less than a week away from the NHL draft, and we're less than 2 weeks away from NHL free agency. So could we see the Predators make a big move over the long weekend? Maybe one that's the move that everyone's been waiting for. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan, and for Jared Stillman. It's Stillman and Company on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
At some point, it's a combination of who did you play and what does your skill set look like.
Get the best analysis of the big stories in the sports world with ESPN's Jason Fitz.
If you reach for a quarterback in the draft because you need one, you're going to set your franchise back 5 years.
Join Fitzy every Wednesday at 4:30. Presented by Blood Assurance. Jason Fitz.
I am 5'9.5"
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
From the Fox 17 News Code Red Weather Center.
I'm Fox 17 News Code Red meteorologist Dan Guthrie. Up to 93 this afternoon, heat index up to 99. Partly cloudy skies with isolated to scattered showers heading into the early evening.
This weather report brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical.
Call the Happy Face Truck today. If you're living with chronic joint pain in your knees, hips, lower back, and shoulders, I've got exciting news for you.
Emmett Smith, all-time rushing leader and Hall of Famer.
Now you can get relief from pain without harmful medications and surgery. Call my guys at QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics specializes in biologic therapies that can repair and restore damaged tissue. I'm talking about natural pain treatments now available, not just for pro athletes, but to people like you.
At QC Kinetics, we're seeing patients every day who suffer from chronic joint pain but who desperately wanted to avoid surgery. We're treating joint pain with biologic therapies, regenerative solutions with long-lasting results.
Listen, it's all about getting your life back. Playing touch football with kids, walking upstairs pain-free, getting back on a job, and patients at QC Kinetics are raving about the results.
QC Kinetics. Call to learn more about restorative treatments that can get you back in the game.
Call QC Kinetics, 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. QC Kinetics, 249-4024.
The Authentically American 4th of July collection is live and ready to ship. Go to authenticallyamerican.us right now to order yours. Plus, 20% of all purchases from the 4th of July collection will be donated to Homes for Our Troops, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to build and donate specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans to enable them and to rebuild their lives. Have a happy and safe 4th of July from Authentically American. Made for you, made in America. Authentically American.
At Kubota, we want to help you deliver a job done right. That's why we want you to know that the new Kubota inventory is arriving daily. You have work to do. We have the reliable, durable, and versatile lineup to help you do it. Visit Krebs Kubota today for all your equipment needs. Krebs Kubota. Stop in, click, or call. Visit us online at KrebsKubota.com.
Cutting the price of your wireless bill feels good, really good. Actually, it feels great. You should try it out. So cut your bill by switching to Straight Talk Wireless, now offering our $45 Silver Unlimited plan with 5 gigabytes of hotspot and nationwide 5G on America's largest, most dependable networks. The $45 Silver Unlimited plan from Straight Talk. Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, no compromise.
A month equals 30 days. See terms and conditions at straighttalk.com. 5G capable device required. Actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary.
Robbie Stanley.
They get a lead in that game and just totally close the door.
Joe Rexrode.
If he plays next year, it's disastrous.
Robbie and Rexrode. Mornings from 6 to 10 on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Stillman and Company.
Sounds like this has been a game-changing day for all of us.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company, 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan in for Jared Stillman. So my question to you, Adam, we've got a long weekend, over 4th of July weekend. What are the odds that a Forsberg deal could get done over the next couple of days? Because I understand that these deals probably don't get done until they absolutely positively have to. But if the reporting is correct from Elliot Friedman on the Midday Show earlier this week, that both sides have settled around $8.5 million per year. If both sides feel okay with that, what are the odds that it could get done this week? That on Tuesday by 2 o'clock, Forsberg will be a Predator.
That's a good question. My guess, this is just a guess. My guess is that something is announced. My guess is that something is announced by the end of next week. I think maybe leading into the draft. And again, this is a complete guess, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got to the draft and they wanted to take care of that business before they focus on drafting players and looking at other free agents. But I think deadlines make deals. I think, as Corey Curtis said earlier, if you lock them in a room, they'd probably get it done. David Poyle is a stubborn negotiator. J.P. Barry is also a stubborn negotiator. The best in the business tend to be that way because they want to do what's best for their teams or their clients. So, a lot of headstrong people involved in this negotiation. But I I think Jim Diamond is the only person I've heard on this station express any sort of pessimism about this deal not getting done.
Do you think that's warranted?
I mean, Jim is a smart guy, and I tend to believe the things that he says. I just have a hard time imagining this not getting done. So, will you have it? Will you come on the air at 2:00 on Tuesday and have a contract to announce? My guess is no, but I wouldn't be surprised if it by the end of the week if you had something to talk about.
So 8.5 is the number that has been discussed, at least by Elliot Friedman, and I think that's a fair deal for both sides. If 8.5 is the starting point, do you think it's higher or lower? And do you think that trade protection is included?
I mean, I think I would trust Elliot if he says that it's going to come around 8.5. I think 8.5 seems like a solid enough number. It allows Phillip to be the highest paid forward on the team, the second highest paid player on the team. Yes, I do think trade protection is going to be a part of it. I don't know if it's going to be throughout the duration of the contract or only during part of the contract, but I would guess that he will have some form of trade protection at some point during his contract.
And when we talk about Forsberg, that's obviously the biggest move that the Predators, or at least Predators fans, are waiting for. But there are several other moves that could be made by the Predators over the weekend. Trades out of the team, trades back into the team. What do you think happens this weekend, or at least over the next week or so before the draft?
I'm not sure. I still think that Philip Forsberg dictates everything else. When they sign him, they know how much cap space they have. They know that they have their top left winger. So I feel like a lot of this is going to be on hold until they get that done. So I'm not sure much will happen this weekend. I think if you're a Predators fan, you can enjoy your holiday weekend without having to worry about it. Although, if I recall correctly, it was July 4th, 2012 that Ryan Suter announced he was signing with the Minnesota Wild. So anything can happen, I suppose, but my guess would be that it's a quiet weekend.
And, I mean, I have a ton of confidence. I said 90% a few weeks ago, confident that Forsberg was going to sign with the Predators. I remain at 90%. I think that's an overwhelming optimism. And to Jim Diamond's point, he isn't incredibly optimistic that this deal is going to get done. In what scenario would Forsberg not sign with the Predators?
I think it's hard to say. I think if the Predators lowballed him, but I don't think they're going to.
I don't see that happening. With the cap space and the urgency to sign Philip Forsberg, I mean, they understand that losing him for nothing is detrimental to this team.
Right. I don't think trade protection is something that would completely torpedo the deal.
You don't?
No. I mean, I think it's going to be a part of it, but I don't think, if he ended up with a modified no trade clause, I don't think it would be the end of the world for him. No, I don't really see, unless the Predators were underselling him, I don't really see there being something that's going to really blow this up. I think it's going to be Philip has to decide whether, he might take less, after taxes, to play for a team that might have a better chance of winning in the immediate future.
And I'm with you that I do think that this deal has to include at least some sort of trade protection. I'm sure that was probably at the top of Forsberg's priority list because I've mentioned it that it's a double-edged sword that Forsberg wants to stay in Nashville because he wants to sign with the Predators and he's going to do what it takes to sign with the Predators. However, he wants to do whatever it takes in order to stay in Nashville because David Poile has a history of trading players away from Nashville. So I do believe that trade protection will at least be a part of this contract. How much, that's up in the air. But if Forsberg does receive some sort of trade protection, if/when, can David Poile continue to use the argument that the Predators don't offer trade protection? Because then you have, 5 players that now have trade protection in Duchesne, in Roman Josi, in Pekka Rinne, and I'm forgetting somebody else. And then also with Forsberg. So I think that's a move that if you make it, that's some power that David Poile is willing to flex in order to get this deal done. But I don't think that you can be a franchise that doesn't offer trade protection anymore when you do it 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, I think it's going to involve special cases. I mean, think about some of the players that have recently signed that didn't get trade protection. Mattias Ekholm didn't get trade protection. Mikael Granlund didn't get trade protection.
But those players aren't Philip Forsberg.
Right, but Matthias Ekholm has been a member of this team for a very long time, and had his name, all up in the rumor mill, 2 seasons ago, before ultimately re-signing. So, I think it's going to have to take special circumstances. I don't think that every player that dons a Predators uniform is going to end up with a no movement clause or a modified no trade clause or a full no trade clause. But David Poile is going to have to loosen his stance to be sure. I mean, he already has, and he's going to have to continue to do so most likely.
The biggest shocker that you think could come over this weekend?
Biggest shocker.
They've traded away Matthew Olivier for a 4th-round pick. That's not necessarily incredibly exciting. That's not going to make you jump out of your seat. What's a move that Poile could make? Let's say with the team that they already have, not necessarily bringing a player in, but a player that Poile could trade away that you think would be the biggest shocker this weekend.
That's good. That's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure I see one. I think, if the team.
I would say Saros. I don't think they're going to do it.
No,
but I think that would be the biggest shocker.
That would be a stunner, yes.
Yeah.
But realistically, I'm not sure I see one. I'm not sure there is a player that that qualifies that I legitimately think is going to get traded that would qualify as a shocker. My shocker of the weekend will be if Joey Chestnut doesn't win the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
That is a very important one, and we will be following that very, very closely. But that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate Adam Vingan stepping in while Jared Stillman is out. Everyone have a very safe and fun 4th of July weekend. And to get you set up for a weekend of patriotism, Chasing Checkers is up next, breaking down all things in NASCAR. Caroline Fenton, Adam Vingan. We will see y'all Tuesday